Members of Parliament, support staff, visitors in the public tribune, radio listeners, TV viewers, all following this meeting via social media, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I welcome you to this public meeting of Parliament. This is public meeting number 21 of today, Tuesday, July the 7th. At this time, I want to say a special word of welcome to the Minister of Justice, Mrs. Natalie Tacklin, and her support staff here with her today. We have established a quorum of 9 members, and I invite everyone to stand for a moment of silence. Thank you. I have a couple of notices, namely notices of absence from the members Waver, Kotai, and Peterson. I also have a notice of lateness from the member De Weaver. Does any member of Parliament have a notification at this time? I see MP Lewis, to whom I give the floor at this time. MP Lewis, you have the floor.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. Good afternoon, Griffier. Good afternoon to the Honorable Minister of Justice and her support staff. Good afternoon to my honorable colleagues, those in the Tribune and the listening and viewing public of Country St. Martin. Madam Chair, I come before you in this honorable house again. I've received information pertaining to the equipment on the dump, Madam Chair, that these equipment is still not fixed. The individuals cannot execute their job on the dump that is supposed to keep our country sanitized. Madam Chair, I would like to know, are we of this country trying to save, or we really want to just spend money that we don't have? Because if we own our own equipment, Madam Chair, I think it is necessary that these equipments get serviced and that the Minister of Rummy put down his foot and make sure these things get done. Because the only thing I see right now, Madam Chair, is the minister is looking for other avenues to hire a contractor to spend more of the country's money. It is important. We are going into our budget debate, Madam Chair, and the minister have to keep this country clean, pay the individuals that need to be paid, and maintain what we have. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, MP Lewis. I now give the floor to MP Roseberg. MP Roseberg, you have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair Lady. Blessed afternoon to yourself and the Griffier, to the Honorable Minister of Justice and the support staff, to my honorable colleagues here present today, and to the public in the public tribune and the ones viewing and listening online. Madam Chair, I would like to take this opportunity to congratulate the softball team, the girls that made a successful start in the qualifiers, Latin America qualifiers. I'm happy to see the result, and I'm looking forward to the further success in this tournament. Thank you.
Thank you, MP Roseberg. The next MP to speak for notifications is MP Doran. MP Doran, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon to you, my colleagues, the Honorable Minister, support staff, those persons in the Tribune, and a special good afternoon to the people of St. Martin. Madam Chair, I too would like to join my colleague in congratulating the young ladies in the softball games thus far. They did well yesterday. They also did well today, and I would like to wish them continued guidance in that endeavor. On another important note, Madam Chair, through you to the Minister of Justice, I've been an advocate. I've been bringing up the fact that our officers, our frontline individuals do not have the right risk and accident insurance. We had an incident a couple of weeks ago where officers were fired at in the Cold Bay area. You know, I think we're always waiting for something to happen. So through you, Madam Chair, to the Minister, in my notification, I would like to get an update on the status of said accident and risk insurance for our frontline officers. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, MP Doran, for the notification. And I continue. I give the floor to MP Irian. MP Irian, you have the floor.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. Good afternoon to the SG. Good afternoon to my colleagues, the Honorable Minister of Justice and her support staff, those of you in the Tribune and the viewing public. Madam Chair, yesterday, actually, this was supposed to be my notification, and it really slipped me. On my way to the airport at 5 o'clock in the morning, dropping a friend, There's one car speeding, trying to overtake me, slip, had to pull back. By the time I reached the airport, it had at least 4 cars within a short span of 15 minutes overtaken, 5 o'clock in the morning. And it only brought me to think about the situation that one of the reasons why we're here today. And I think that we really have to be more accountable as a people, right? There was also a person riding a bike. Sometimes I run early in the morning, and it's very disturbing, even fearful to even think about running. So I have to kind of plan my activities around days where maybe you don't have no club or being going out at night. So I'm asking the public, the general public, let's be a little bit more cautious. Let's be a little bit more concerned on the road. And we really don't have, if you're late already at 5 o'clock in the morning, then you might as well be 10 minutes extra late. There's no rush at that point in time. We live in an island. We have a little bit of an island culture. But we really need to be a little bit more accountable and responsible on the road. And I'm asking the general population if we could do that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, MP Irian. I don't see any other members requiring notifications, so we can continue with this meeting for today. And the agenda point for this meeting is the following: deliberations with the Minister of Justice on the increase in traffic accidents and road safety concerns and other justice-related matters. This document, members of Parliament, is registered under number 1207, so our IS number 1207, and it's dated the 24th of June, 2026. The meeting was requested by the members Lewis, Ottley, and Lacroes. A brief reminder before we continue with the meeting is that, considering that this is a public meeting of Parliament, the chairperson, myself, can allow interruptions, which I probably will during this meeting as well. However, just wish to remind the members about the use of the interruption lectern. It's for members to make use of the possibility to either seek a brief clarification, make assertions on the topic at hand, or add information to the discussion. The amount of interruptions per member, as usual, is 3 per agenda point, so it counts for this agenda point as well. At this time, I would want to give the floor to one of the requesters of the meeting to elucidate this particular request for the meeting. And I believe it's MP Lewis to whom I will give the floor as one of the requesters of the meeting to elucidate the request as put in writing by members of Parliament. MP Lewis, you have the floor.
Good afternoon again, Madam Chair. We are here today because enough is enough when it comes to what's going on in our country. The Minister of Justice does not cause traffic accidents. The Minister of Justice is also part of the solution. And we are asking her here today, Madam Chair, in order to hear exactly what is her plan. What plan she has for the country, because many young people here in this country are losing their lives due to either reckless riding, due to just maneuvering on the road in these bikes. There are reckless drivers as well, Madam Chair. That's the execution branch that needs to execute the laws here in this country. We need to know, Madam Chair, what is going on with the personnel, what is going on with road safety, what is the plan? Madam Chair, over the course of weeks, we have lost many lives on the Dutch side, on the French side, due to traffic accidents. This Minister of Justice, Madam Chair, is seldomly in this House. And I think it is time that we sit here and caucus and come with some type of solution on how we're going to move this country forward. I can say this, Madam Chair, in the past, even when we as individuals, as parliamentarians sitting on the opposite bench, when you reach out to ministers, it takes a long time for you to get an answer. When you reach out to the ministers just to sit down and have a conversation with them based on the grave matters in this country, we do not get that opportunity to sit with them. Today, Madam Chair, I have to use my power as parliamentarian to request for urgent meeting because, as you can see, our families inside are here. because certain decisions were made that some may agree with and some may not agree with. And therefore, it is my job and my duty to hold the Minister of Justice accountable, to have oversight on the Ministry of Justice, to see how we are going to move this country forward in a safe and productive manner. Other generating matters, Madam Chair, has to do with the other justice-related matters. I did understand through our secretariat that my question was very broad, and indeed, yes, it was broad, because there's a lot of pending issues other than accidents that relates under the biggest ministry in this country. And I do understand that the minister is not a man, so I had to say sometimes you need to have cojones, you need to have the balls in order to lead this country. And as a Minister of Justice, the Minister of Justice has to make decisions sometimes that are also unpopular. Whether department heads like it, whether the prosecutor's office like it, we need the firm hand of justice. And that mantle sits in the hand of this current minister. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, MP Lewis, for that introduction to the topic. Based on the request as forwarded to the Minister of Justice, namely to have deliberations with the Minister on the increase in traffic accidents and road safety concerns, as well as other justice-related matters, the Minister has prepared a presentation, and I now invite the Minister to take the floor. Minister Natalie Tatlin, you have the floor.
I hope I can be heard properly with the positioning of the microphone. Perfect. Madam Chair Lady, honourable members of Parliament, those sitting in the tribune, and of course the people of St. Martin watching and listening at home, good afternoon. 9 people have died on our roads this year. 9 people in 8 separate accidents. Every one of them left a family behind. Every one of them left an empty chair at a table somewhere on this island. And before we talk about the numbers, or the departments, or the budgets, I want that to be the starting point of this meeting, because that is why we are here. Before we start the discussion and address the questions that have brought me here, I would like to also take a minute of this meeting to clarify that I never refused to appear in Parliament. Parliament's letter requesting my presence is dated June 24th, but it only reached my office last week, during a period when members of Parliament themselves were traveling and off-island. From the moment I received the request, my intention was clear: to appear before Parliament and to provide factual and complete information. Because of that, I moved this meeting by just 1 day, from Monday to Tuesday, in order to prepare properly. 1 day. The requested 9 agenda points before us come from a service that is already stretched thin and is the same service that has answered a very large number of parliamentary questions from this chamber in recent months. I take this Parliament seriously, and I take this subject seriously. And it's exactly why I did not want to stand here with half an answer or half a story. Good answers take preparation, and Parliament deserves nothing less. So here I am today, 1 day later, but fully prepared. And with that clarification, we can focus on what actually matters. So let's start with the facts, because the discussion has to stay honest, and the honest picture is more complicated than the headline. The number of traffic accidents on St. Martin is not going up. It is going down. In 2024, the police registered 812 accidents up until week 27. In 2025, 719. This year, so far, 681 for the same period. That's 2 years of decline over the same measure. However, deaths are a different story. And I want to be precise rather than dramatic, because the number does not follow a clean line. It fluctuates hard from year to year, and in 2024, we lost 7 people in 6 accidents. In 2025, 4 in 4 accidents. This year, already 9, with half of the year ahead of us. So the honest headline is not that accidents are rising, accidents are falling, but the honest headline is that our accidents have become deadlier, and that a single bad year can undo several good ones. And that distinction matters because it also tells us where to look as a ministry. So let me tell you what actually happened. because these deaths are not 9 versions of the same story. The 4 fatal accidents in 2025 were these. In January, there were 2. A scooter overtaking another struck it as the rider swerved to avoid a hole in the road, and an SUV hit a cyclist that was riding on the shoulder of the road. In April, a scooter rider knocked down and killed a pedestrian. In September, a scooter and a truck. 3 of the 4 victims were on 2 wheels. This year's 9 are these: a scooter rider who lost control, a pedestrian who, intoxicated, walked under a garbage truck, an SUV and a pickup where the driver suffered a heart attack behind the wheel, a scooter rider who crashed into a stationary bus, a car that hit into a guardrail where 2 of the passengers in the vehicle passed away, a scooter rider who did a wheelie into a car, a truck and a scooter with the scooter rider on the wrong side of the road, and a car and a motorcycle where a collision occurred during an overtaking maneuver. Look at that list honestly, and 2 things jump out. First, the vulnerability of scooter and motorcycle riders. 5 of this year's 9 deaths were on 2 wheels. While each incident must be considered on its own facts, several involved circumstances, such as a rider losing control, performing a wheelie, or traveling on the wrong side of the road. And in many of these, it was the rider's own conduct that was the cause of the accident. These are far too often the individuals who do not come home. And this is where our scooter and our helmet rules and the enforcement of those are aimed. Second, and I say this not to diminish a single death, but because you deserve the truth, not every one of these was something that a checkpoint or a traffic law could have prevented. A heart attack behind the wheel is not an enforcement failure by the police. A police analysis of the first 2 quarters gives us the pattern behind the individual cases, and it's a clear one. The accidents without injury are almost always due to inattention or distraction by the drivers. And the accidents that kill are almost all a matter of reckless driving. And that is the target. I want you to know that this is also not unique to St. Martin. Aruba started this year with 2 pedestrians that were killed by a drunk driver who fled the scene. Their prosecutor's office describes the same pattern that we see here in St. Martin. More vehicles every year, drunk driving, people leaving the scene of accidents. The Netherlands, for example, counted 759 traffic deaths last year. This is the highest number that they have had in 18 years. And that's with all their cameras, with all their budgets, and with all their infrastructure. And I'm not saying that to excuse anything. I'm saying it because it also tells us something important. Nowhere in the world is this problem being solved by enforcement alone. So I want you all to keep that thought because I'm going to come back to it a little bit later. Then I want to talk a little bit about what the police are actually doing. The letter from Parliament talks about enforcement, controls, checkpoints. But I do want to give you the numbers because there's a story being told that our police are doing very little, but the numbers say otherwise. In the first half of this year alone, roughly 60 traffic patrols were carried out. In 2024, officers wrote 2,448 traffic fines. In 2025, that number rose to 3,236. This year, we're at 1,095 and counting. During these controls, vehicles were taken off the road, weapons were found and seized, and people were arrested for all types of different offenses. 40 firearms were taken off our streets in 2024, 54 in 2025, and 31 already for this year. Last year, 160 seized scooters were crushed, and this year, 150 scooters have been crushed, with 60 more scheduled to be crushed. And the vehicles themselves are also being pulled out of circulation in real numbers. In 2025, 173 vehicles were taken into custody, and further 134 vehicles and 14 scooters were formally seized. This year so far, 96 scooters have been taken into custody, and 43 vehicles and 8 scooters have been seized. I use those 2 words deliberately because the law says that they're not the same thing. Custody is a temporary hold of that vehicle, while seizure is the formal step that we take that enables us to keep the vehicle or the scooter and destroy it. And those numbers rise almost every year. and they're produced by officers working shifts and overtime that I would honestly not wish on anyone. So when I hear that nothing is being done, I have to push back. And it's not for my sake, but it's for theirs. And now I want to be honest about what the police cannot do. And here is where I owe Parliament and the public complete honesty, because you can't fix a problem that you're not willing to accurately describe. First, I want to talk about the traffic department. There's a perception that this department handles everything to do with traffic: controls, patrols, speed checks, all of it. The traffic department consists of 4 people. 4. And their job is investigating accidents and writing the official reports for the prosecutor. And as we can see, there have been more than 1,500 accidents in recent years, plus around 600 vehicle export files from last year, plus the inspection of parade trucks, plus reports for insurance companies. Where they see an infrastructure problem behind an accident, they report it to VROMI so that it can be fixed. And where schools ask, they come and they teach traffic lessons. But they do not do traffic controls. They physically cannot. Traffic enforcement is carried out by Basic Police Care, BPZ. About 70 officers in 4 shifts covering the entire island, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And I want this esteemed House to hear what their core business actually is, because traffic is only one piece of it. These are the officers who maintain public order and safety across the island. They answer every 911 call, they respond to every neighborhood complaint, they give help to everyone who needs help, and many residents come to the police, even with civil disputes, simply because they have nowhere else to go, and the police don't turn them away. They run the traffic controls and other preventive controls, often together with other enforcement services. They police the events that grow in number every single year. And keep in mind that leave, illness, and mandatory training mean that not all 70 are available on any given day. On top of that core work, 2 tasks were added that belong to nobody's job description. Since 2023, they guard the detainees held above the Phillipsburg police station, a task that was moved to the police without staff, without budget, and without positions in the function book, which means that officers are pulled off the street to work that cell block around the clock. And let's not forget, they also protect officials and dignitaries, because there's no unit for that either. And traffic enforcement happens on top of all of that, not instead of it, but on top of it. And behind all of this sits one number that I need Parliament to remember. The police force is staffed at 56%. The function book says 332 positions. There are 189 people on the payroll, and that includes administrative personnel, which is 31. And not all of these people are actually deployable. And that 332 is itself based on a reality from 2010, not on the island of 2026. Now, hold on to that number, and then listen to what is being asked of these same officers. This Parliament, the media, the public are calling for more enforcement on traffic. The same Parliament, the same media, the same public are calling for more enforcement on gun violence and robberies, on noise nuisance, on parking, and every year there are more events on this island that also need policing. Every one of those demands is legitimate, and every one of them draws on the same 189 people. There's no traffic team that's waiting in reserve. More enforcement on one thing means today less enforcement on another thing. So when the chief of police tells me that there's little room for more interventions than are already taking place, and that squeezing our officers anymore would not be humanly possible, I believe him. And I'll say it here plainly instead of pretending otherwise. Second, drunk driving. Members, this Parliament should know how thin our position really is here, because two things are missing at the same time: the equipment and the law. Our police force has no breathalyzers, not the handheld ones for the roadside, and not the large evidential machines at the station. So drunk driving on this island is currently addressed only after the accident or when someone is visibly impaired during a control. using a physical sobriety test that has to be repeated before the assistant prosecutor and again the next day in order to hold up in court. But even if we bought the machines tomorrow, our traffic ordinance gives them nothing to stand on. It contains no legal blood alcohol limits. There's no basis for roadside breath testing. There are no rules on breath analysis equipment, and there are no penalties tied to any particular level of measurement. Structural alcohol controls, such as the kind that Aruba has, the kind that actually change behavior, require both the equipment and the legislation. And today, we have neither one of those. The equipment, of course, is a budget question. The legislation is a question for this esteemed House and for the new ordinance that I will come to shortly in my presentation. And the breathalyzers are not the only gap in equipment. The same budget limits regularly mean too few operational patrol vehicles on the road because cars that run 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, wear out fast and cannot always be replaced. No speed measuring equipment, and too little storage space for seized vehicles, which means that seizure, one of the other interventions that actually hurts and changes behavior, is sometimes impossible because we have no place to store the vehicles. Third, and this one might surprise most people, many of the traffic fines that we do write cannot survive in court. A judge can only uphold a speeding ticket if the speed limit is posted. On large parts of this island, there were no speed limit signs, no built-up area signs, no school zone signs, and no road markings. Where the road authority has not made the rule visible, the court voids the fine. Our officers are therefore spending scarce capacity writing tickets that the law, as things stand, cannot always back up. Fourth, scooters. Everyone sees the behavior. Everyone asks why the police do not simply chase them down. The police have no motorcycles for pursuit. But the deeper truth is this. A chase through our traffic puts other road users, the officers, and the rider himself in danger. And that danger is out of proportion to a traffic offense. And when we weigh those, the weighing always comes out on the side of safety first. So riders who flee the scene or who flee often simply cannot be stopped by the police. And that is something that is deeply frustrating, but it's deeply frustrating, I think, most of all for the officers more than anybody else. The real answer to solve this problem, in my opinion, and one that I will be pursuing, is cameras and the fining of license plates. But I'll get to that a little bit later in the presentation as well. So the question, of course, is whose job is it if I've just said that it's not what the police can't do? Now, I need to say something that may sound like deflection, but I want to assure everybody that it's not. And it is the map of the problem. And without the map, we're going to be back in this room next year having the same meeting. Justice enforces the traffic law. That is our job, and I've just accounted for it. But justice does not build or line the roads. Justice does not decide what a driving lesson contains or when someone gets a license. Justice does not issue the permits for taxis, buses, quads, and tour buggies that load our road network further every year. Justice does not set the closing hours of nightlife, even though everyone in this room knows the connection between those closing hours and the accidents that happen at 4 o'clock in the morning, or at 5 in the morning, as the MP rightfully stated about overtaking cars. Justice does not control how many vehicles are imported into this island, which today is unlimited, onto a road network designed for a much smaller Samartan. Justice does not regulate insurance, even as insurers increasingly refuse to cover scooters at all, so that when a crash happens, the victim is left with nothing, and the scooter disappears from the scene before the police arrive because nobody involved has anything to gain from staying. Justice does not grant building permits, even when a building opens before anyone has thought about the traffic and the parking around it. And justice does not write or approve its own budget. Behavior in traffic is shaped by 4 things: attitude, personal responsibility, prevention, and enforcement. Police and justice hold one of those 4 levers. 1. And I will pull that lever as hard as capacity and the law will allow me to pull it. But if we only ever pull that one lever, we will continue counting the dead every year in this country, and we will keep holding urgent meetings of Parliament. Solving this needs every ministry, and it needs this Parliament. I mean that literally, and at the end, I will tell you what I'm asking of Parliament as well. But there is a lot that's happening together, so I don't want to leave you with the impression that the ministries are pointing fingers at each other. The cooperation is real, and it's producing results, and the police deserve credit for driving a lot of it. Together with Romy, a plan was made to make Phillipsburg scooter-free with barriers and closed alleys, and the budget for that has been made available. Together with Romy, Canagita Street became one-way after the analysis of the crossing with Percy LaBega Street. There is a worked-out advisory for new signage across the island and for road markings, including the solid lines that make overtaking enforceable. There is an advisory for an alternative to Welgelegen Road, which is overloaded and too often blocked. There is a redesign advisory for the junctions of Welgelegen Road and AJC Brouwers Road. Those last three exist on paper, and of course, they're waiting for one thing, which is budget. Together with TIAT, the conversations with tour operators have visibly changed behavior on the road, and the joint approach to gypsy taxis in Phillipsburg has reduced the pressure in Point Blanche. Joint controls with the other enforcement services send the message that the law applies. And the police contributed to the draft of a new traffic ordinance, which brings me to the piece of this story that I find the hardest to accept. Our road traffic ordinance is severely outdated. It does not properly cover holding a phone while driving. It has no basis for speed cameras or for fining by license plate. Its drunk driving provisions come from before modern breath testing, with no legal alcohol limits as we know them elsewhere in the kingdom. It barely touches leaving the scene of an accident. It says nothing useful about street racing, drifting, or burnouts. And it was written before e-bikes, e-steps, quads, and trikes even existed. Years ago, a project was started to modernize this ordinance, together with the Ministry of TIAT. All stakeholders sat at the table, a draft was produced, and then the company that did the work was not paid. And so the draft was never released, and it sits there to this day. A finished piece of the solution, locked away over an unpaid invoice. Of everything that I will tell you today, this is the fastest win that is available to this country, and I intend to pursue it. And I would welcome this Parliament to pursue it with me, because writing law is your core task, and nothing prevents this Parliament from taking the initiative yourselves and taking it here. But I owe you the full truth on this one as well. I don't have the budget to pay the unpaid invoice. None. Not for settling the outstanding invoice, but also not for what comes after we have the law. Because a law on paper is just the beginning. Camera enforcement, breath testing, plate-based fining, all of it needs equipment, systems, and people to make it a real thing. So if Parliament is serious about the new ordinance, and I hope that Parliament is, then I ask you to be serious about it all the way. Look within the country's budget for the coverage. Use your right of amendment. Or come with other funding avenues. I am open to every serious proposal from any faction in this room. What I cannot do is pass a law with empty hands and then stand here next year explaining to this honorable House why nothing has changed. So what can be done? And I want to be careful with my words here because there's a difference between a promise and a proposal. And I will not stand here making promises that I have no budget to keep. What follows is the package of measures that the police and the ministry have identified. Some of it I can start within existing means, and I will, but most of it requires decisions and money that do not yet exist. I am putting the full package before this Parliament deliberately so that we decide together what this country is willing to pay for and so that nobody can say afterwards that there were no options on the table. What can start now within the existing means? Awareness campaigns through DCOM and the channels of the ministry and the police, including honest communication about accidents and their causes, because prevention starts with people understanding what is actually killing us. Expansion of traffic lessons in schools into secondary schools, ideally built around a traffic park, a safe practice environment where children learn to be road users in real conditions. Curacao has one. Our children deserve one too. And I will make the case to my colleague of education. Raising the fine amounts, together with the prosecutor's office, including clear prosecution gap baselines for the most common offenses, and additional training for accident investigators in modern methods, laser measurement, digital crash scene mapping, modern forensic equipment. What can be done in the medium to long term if the decisions are made and the money exists and is found are 6 things. 1, full signage and marking of the road network so that the rules are visible and every fine that our police officers write can hold up in court. That work sits with the Ministry of Rumi, but it is the single most important enabler of everything else. 2, the new traffic ordinance that would allow for that would have provisions covering phone use, camera enforcement, plate-based fining, modern drunk driving law and legal limits, and roadside testing, leaving the scene, dangerous driving, and clear rules for scooters, quads, and electric vehicles, including helmet standards and the power to confiscate illegal parts. 3rd, alongside stricter penalties, a behavioral measure that Aruba already uses for drunk drivers. A mandatory course paid by the driver and the offender himself in a group of 8 to 12 people where people are confronted with what their driving can do, learn from each other, and work on it at home as well. Punishment plus education, because punishment alone changes less than we like to think. 4th, an expansion of our traffic department with special enforcement officers with BAVPOL, who can run traffic controls, speed checks, and vehicle inspections, and who can also support public order in the tourist areas in the case of events. 5, digitizing the fine system so that enforcement, administration, and prosecution finally connect with one another, and makes place-based, and when plate-based fining becomes available or becomes possible, which also means that our license plate registration itself will have to be tightened, because you can't find a plate if you can't find the person. 6, the equipment itself. Breathalyzers, certified measurement, properly equipped patrol vehicles, and storage space for seized vehicles. And alongside all of this, the law already exists but is not being executed, a guarantee fund, so that the victim of an uninsured driver is not left standing in the cold. And I know that this is one that the Minister of Finance is currently working on with the insurance companies. I repeat that this is not a menu, that this is the menu. It's not the order. Which of these becomes a reality and when depends on choices that this government and this parliament make together, starting with the budget. And that's not me hiding behind the money. That's me refusing to sell you a plan that I cannot pay for. And now the sentence that the Minister of Justice before me has had to say, and that I will say without embellishment. Nearly all of this costs money, and the justice budget is being cut and not expanded. And let me be precise about how that works, because the shorthand, should I allow this interruption first? Yeah, sorry.
Minister, with your indulgence, I'll ask you to pause for a second as I allow MP Irian to make an interruption. MP Irian?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, the Minister has referenced a budget a few times already during her presentation, and it's very interesting because the Minister says that it's up to Parliament to also help. But the Minister of Finance also indicated the budget 2027 is already approved by the Council of Ministers and on its way to the Council of Advice. So I would hope, and that's one that the Minister, I want to ask the Minister now then, is any of the things that you have mentioned there budgeted in 2027? And if so, if not so, why not? Because you just approved that budget. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, MP Irian. Minister, you may continue. And
Yes.
if you can address the question by MP Irian as an interruption, then you could also do so.
Yep. And I think I go into that right here, because there's a perception that the minister is the one cutting the budget of the police or cutting the budget of the Ministry of Finance, and that's not how our budgets come about. Every year, I submit and defend the budget that the Ministry of Justice actually needs. The allocation is then decided in the budget process of the whole government, where my colleague of finance has the unenviable task of dividing a pie that is too small among ministries that have real needs. And I'm not pointing the finger at her because she didn't make the pie. And every minister at the table believes, with reason, that their need is the greatest need in the whole of government. And I know that the Honorable MP also is familiar from his previous role of how the division of the budget goes. So if these matters are in the budget for 2027, no, because I can barely cover the services that I have already with the budget that I have for 2026 and 2027. So these are extras that we simply cannot afford if we have to choose between obligations that we have within the kingdom, paying for the court, paying for the Coast Guard, things that we have no other choice because those budgets are set by kingdom law. We have to pay those things. And at the end of the day, it's do I pay salaries or do I spend money for our traffic ordinance? So those are the decisions that have to be made. And the pie is too small to me. I can't make it any bigger. So to answer that question, no, they're not in the budget.
Thank you, Minister Tacklin. I allowed you to finish answering because that's what you were busy doing, to answer the first interruption before now. I will allow MP Duran to make an interruption. MP Duran.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for your indulgence. Madam Chair, through you to the Minister. Minister, you mentioned that it is not in the budget. However, that statement could have fly over my head maybe a couple of weeks ago. But just last week, the Minister of Finance mentioned that the budget was unanimously approved. Therefore, it was a Council of Ministers decision where the Minister mentioned that everybody approved it. So therefore, if it's not in the budget, that's because you approved the budget that way. Thank you very much.
Thank you, MP Duran. Minister, you may continue your presentation if you can address that. Otherwise, I'll invite you to continue with your presentation.
I think it was a statement more than a question, and I can't speak for voting in the Council of Ministers as that's confidential. So what the Minister of Finance said, the Minister of Finance said, but it might have been different. So again, I want to say that the final word on the budget belongs to no minister at all, actually. It belongs to this Parliament, and which is exactly why I am raising this here, because at the end of the day, even though the ministers approve a budget in Council of Ministers, this Parliament is the one that passes that budget and has the power of amendment to amend that budget. So whether or not that was agreed upon in the Council of Ministers is irrelevant, I think, for the budget power of Parliament. So what I want to say is the plans exist, the advisories exist, the draft law exists. What does not exist, I will say it again, is the budget. Every year, the police submit what they actually need, and every year it comes back heavily reduced. The police school cannot fill its classes, nothing to do with budget actually. The pool of candidates is small, and every island in the kingdom is fishing in the same pool. So people move where the conditions are better. Without structural investment, our police force will shrink through retirement faster than it grows through intake. And that is why we also have to be creative, what we are trying to do as a ministry. We're looking at alternative routes into the service and serious investment into technology, including artificial intelligence as an alternative to labor-intensive police work. Because we're not going to solve the personnel shortage of this size with personnel alone. But creativity does not replace money. Safety costs money. And there's no version of this story where it does not. So then there's the of this Parliament. Madam Chair Lady, I will end where members may not expect me to. Holding me accountable is your job. Do it. Ask the hard questions today, and I will answer them. But I want to ask something of you as well, because the government and this Parliament are communicating vessels, not opposing camps. And the 8 families that I began with are not helped by a meeting where blame is assigned and nothing else moves. So there are 3 things. First, when the modernized traffic ordinance comes, carry it, improve it, pass it, or take the initiative yourselves and help find the money that makes it more than paper. That is the power that this Parliament has in its own hands here today. Second, when the budget comes before you and you see the lines for police capacity, for equipment, for signage, remember this meeting. It is not consistent to demand more enforcement in July and cut the means for it in December.
Minister, thank you, and I would have asked for your indulgence. I see MP Lewis requesting the floor for interruption. MP Lewis, you have the floor.
Madam Chair, we have to be very, very careful when we say certain things, when we're talking about blaming. Nobody ain't blaming nobody here. Because I could remember when the incident that recently happened that caused the life of an individual, this individual didn't blame the minister. He picked up the phone and he called the minister. And the minister said she didn't know anything about it and that she was going to, inquire about the situation. And while I was sitting here deliberating in Parliament, the individual was on its way being deported, who is under the responsibility of that minister to make that decision. Nobody is. Nobody blame.
Thank you, MP Lewis. Minister?
Sounded like blame to me, but all right. Third, help keep the story honest. Our officers are carrying this island at 56% strength. When the message that they hear over and over is that they are doing nothing, it does something to them. And it does something to how safe our residents and our visitors believe that this island is. The criticism that is fair, give it. The picture that is false, let us correct it together. And part of the true picture is this. Alongside the daily work, real steps are being taken to strengthen the information position of all our justice services, also internationally, so that enforcement becomes information-driven and we can start closing the tap through which firearms, drugs, and people reach this island instead of only mopping up behind it. Those international partnerships bring more than just information. They bring trust, joint operations, and access to funds that this government could never provide on its own. Through the cooperation with the Netherlands, officers of KPSM and other services are receiving training and education that our own training budget could simply never pay for.
Minister, I will now allow MP Roseburg to make an interruption. MP Roseburg.
Thank you, Chair Lady. I was doubting if I was going to make the interruption or not, but seeing that the Minister brought forward that the meeting is also focused on bringing solutions, and I have been focused on point number one, is it possible that the Minister maybe can provide, even if it has to be through the confidential route, the pending invoice, so that Parliament can look at that and maybe we can come together? Thank you.
Thank you, MP Roseburg. Minister, if you can address MP Roseburg's request.
Yes.
And or continue with your
Yes.
presentation.
That we're happy to provide that to Parliament. Then I wanted to go back again on what we are gaining through cooperation. As I mentioned, through the cooperation with the Netherlands, officers of KPSM and other services are receiving training and education that our own training budget could simply never pay for. That quality is being built right now, quietly, and it deserves to be part of the story that this Parliament tells about its police force. 9 people, 8 accidents. Behind every solution I have named here today, there's a family that needed it sooner. Let us do this work together so that next year this number is smaller, and the year after that, smaller again. Thank you, and I am ready to receive the questions of Parliament.
Thank you, Minister, for your presentation. And members of Parliament, you now have the opportunity to ask questions on the topic at hand. A reminder that the time allotted is 20 minutes in the first round and 10 minutes in the second round. The sequence of speakers will be according to the list. This is a public meeting, and thus you would have to write in to speak. I have some members who have already done that, and I start with giving MP Doran the floor. MP Doran, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair Lady. You know, Minister, honestly, today I thought you was coming here with a different tone. I really, really thought the tone would have been different. Because one of the things that we came here to address is, of course, the most recent situation and the manner in which it was handled. Nevertheless, you have your role to play, and I have mine. Madam Chair, I heard the Minister mention that good answers take time. With all due respect, Madam Chair, through you to the Minister, I don't want good answers. I just want the truth. The truth shouldn't take time, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I heard the Minister mention that in the chronological order breakdown in all the different accidents, the last accident, that a vehicle was overtaken and caused a collision. But Madam Chair, I also have an article here from the prosecutor office where it states that the suspect has been informed that he will be prosecuted in connection with this case. The release of pretrial detention does not affect the continuation of the criminal proceedings, including the eventual trial in court. It goes on to say, Madam Chair, in regards to the prosecutor office wishes to clarify the information circulating publicly, suggesting that the suspect overtook vehicles prior to the collision has not been supported by any evidence obtained during the investigation to date. But yet, the minister mentioned that the vehicle was overtaken. So my first question through you to the minister, Madam Chair, is what information do you have that the prosecutor office does not have? And how did that influence the eventual deportation decision? Because if you have more information than them, then I think it would be actually opposite, and the way of process would be different. Madam Chair, I don't know what to believe anymore, to be honest. I don't want any good answers. I just want to make that clear. We just want the truth. Madam Chair, this debate extends beyond a single incident. It's about whether the people of St. Martin continue to have confidence in our justice system, that it will pursue accountability fairly, consistently, and without creating the perception that justice can simply leave the island. Wherever we go, Madam Chair, this issue is being discussed in our constituents. They're asking what happened, whether the proper process was followed, whether our laws are sufficient. As members of Parliament, Madam Chair, we have a responsibility to seek those answers on behalf of those people. Let me also be clear, Madam Chair. Parliament is not here to determine whether anyone was guilty or innocent. That responsibility belongs to the court. Our role is to determine whether the proper legal process was followed, whether the relevant authorities acted within the law, and whether our legal framework adequately protects the integrity of the criminal investigation. The perception left with the public is that an individual connected to a fatal traffic collision was permitted to leave the jurisdiction before the justice process was fully run its course. Whether the legal requirements were followed or not, government must understand why this has shaken the community in terms of the confidence in our justice system. If an individual is subject to immigration enforcement while also being connected to a serious criminal investigation, the public expects those authorities to work together. Parliament must understand what safeguards are in place to ensure that one government process does not inadvertently compromise another. While government has obligations toward every individual, it also have equally important obligations towards victims, Madam Chair, and their families, and the wider community. The justice system must ensure that victims never feel administrative procedures were given greater priority than accountability. Justice must not only be done, it must also be seen and done. Madam Chair, public confidence depends upon transparency, accountability, and the assurance that every investigation is allowed to run its proper course. That is why today's discussion is not about politics. It's about whether the people of St. Martin can trust that their justice system will protect them, preserve the integrity of the criminal investigation, and ensure that accountability is never compromised. Madam Chair, every fatal traffic accident deserves a thorough investigation. Every victim deserves confidence that the process has been followed and allowed to run its course. Every family deserves to know that all relevant authorities acted in coordination and in accordance with the law. Ultimately, the people of St. Martin deserve clear answers, Madam Chair, confidence in their institutions, and assurance that justice will always be pursued fairly, transparently, and also without any exception. I go over to questions that I have for the Minister, Madam Chair, through you, in terms of the legal process, authority, and decision-making. Following a fatal traffic collision, what is the legal process from the moment the police arrive on the scene until the final determination is made regarding criminal liability? At what point does a traffic collision transition from being treated as an accident into being investigated as a potential criminal offense, or who makes that determination? Which authority ultimately determines whether fatal traffic collision should be investigated as negligence, reckless driving, manslaughter, or any other criminal offense? What legal threshold can be met before a person involved in a fatal traffic collision be considered a criminal suspect? Once a person is identified as a suspect, who has the legal authority to determine whether that individual remains in custody, is released, or subject to any other conditions pending the investigation process being followed? What role does the police force play in the decision, and what role is reserved for the public prosecutor in terms of, or the investigating judge? If the individual involved is not a St. Martin resident or is otherwise subject to immigration enforcement, how are criminal investigations' interests balanced against immigration proceedings? Before a deportation order is executed involving someone connected to a fatal collision, is confirmation required from the police force or the public prosecutor office that the person's presence is no longer required for investigative purposes and potential prosecution? At what stage, if any, is the Minister of Justice informed of such cases, and what statutory authority does the Minister of Justice have to intervene if there's a concern that deportation could prejudice an ongoing investigation or future prosecution? Can the Minister of Justice identify any legislative gaps that may create uncertainty regarding which authority has a final responsibility, ensuring that the subject remains available for the completion of the criminal investigation? Madam Chair, relevant criminal code provisions under Article 284 of the Wetboek van Strafrecht of St. Martin provides the following. Hij die aan het verkeer deelneemt en zich daarbij zodanig gedraagt dat aan de schuld wijte verkeersaanval plaatsvindt, waardoor de ander wordt gedood, wordt gestraft met de gevangenisstraf van ten hoogste 4 jaar of geldboete van de 4e categorie. Indien de schuld bestaat uit roekeloosheid, wordt hij gestraft met de gevangenisstraf van ten hoogste 6 jaar of geldboete van de 5e categorie. Basically, Madam Chair, a person who participates in traffic and behaves in such a manner that through his or her fault a traffic accident occurred resulting in death of another person is liable to imprisonment for up to 4 years and a cash fine up to the 4th degree. If the fault considers recklessness, or maximum penalty of 6 years imprisonment to the 5th category of a fine. So therefore, Madam Chair, when I sit here and listen that nothing can be done until XYZ law changes, Minister, through you, Madam Chair, respectfully, that can't work. Madam Chair, Article 286 provides, if an offender at the time of the accident referred to in Article 284, 285 was under apparent influence of alcohol or intoxicating substance, the maximum imprisonment term of increase by 1.5 years is applicable. Fines increase to the next higher category. Madam Chair, based on the Criminal Code, 284 of the Criminal Code provides the criminal liability where a person's negligence or reckless conduct traffic results in the death of another person. Can the Minister explain how this provision is applied in practice following a fatal traffic collision? At the stage of the investigation, does the public prosecutor determine whether evidence support an offense under Article 284? What investigative steps are ordinarily prepared or required before this can be determined whether the driver's conduct amounts to ordinary negligence or the higher threshold of being reckless under Article 284? Article 286 provides an increased penalty where the driver was under the apparent influence of alcohol or any intoxicating substance. In cases where the driver leaves the scene before the police arrive, how does the ministry ensure that the investigators can still establish whether Article 286 may be applicable? Does the minister believe that the current investigative procedures adequately protect the ability of the law enforcement to gather evidence and necessarily determine whether Articles 284 or 286 should have been invoked by the public prosecutor?
MP Duran, if I just might interrupt you for a moment. The minister asks if you can read a little slower. They're trying to record as many of the questions now. Of course,
Okay.
they can check later, but she would like as many recorded now as possible.
Okay.
So if you could
The-
take that into
Yeah,
consideration.
we're doing it because I know the time is short, that's why. But how much time do I have, Madam Chair?
You would have 9 minutes.
Okay,
Yeah, you may continue, MP Duran.
thank you. Regarding a hit and run, what is the legal duty of the driver immediately following a collision involves serious injury or death? Through you, Madam Chair. Is leaving the scene of a collision itself a criminal offense? Does voluntary reporting to the police hours after or days later extinguish liability from leaving the scene? Under what circumstances may someone lawfully leave the scene before the police arrive? What penalties exist for failing to remain at the scene? Through you, Madam Chair. Does leaving the scene hinder the police ability to investigate possible intoxication or impairment? Does the minister consider leaving the scene to be an aggravating factor during a prosecution? In regards to deportation during a criminal investigation, Madam Chair, does the ministry currently permit for persons to be deported while an active criminal investigation is going on? So not only with an accident or anything, in general, a jewelry store robbery, a murder, anything that is a criminal offense, through you, Madam Chair. Does the ministry allow for deportation? And if so, can the statistics be given for the last 3 years where situations like this played a role? Madam Chair, under what circumstances, if any, would it be appropriate for immigration enforcement to proceed before a criminal investigation can be completed? Has the government reviewed its policies following the recent public concern regarding the deportation of individuals who were the subject of active criminal investigations? Through you, Madam Chair. If a suspect is deported before the criminal investigation is concluded, what legal mechanisms are available to ensure that persons remain available for questioning or eventual prosecution during trial? Does the minister believe that the current legal framework adequately protects the integrity of the criminal investigations where a subject is subject to deportation proceedings? Madam Chair, all of the points that I brought forward here was the sources are the Wetboek van Strafrecht and also the traffic ordinance, the Algemene Politiekeur as well, and also the government of Sint Maarten official publications in the National Landscourant. Madam Chair, the discussion here today is not about politics. It's about confidence in the people of Sint Maarten in our justice system. Our duty as Parliament is to determine not whether somebody is guilty or not, but to determine that the right due process can be followed, and also to ensure that our laws are followed, the institutions function as they should, and justice is never compromised by procedural shortcomings or lack of coordination. The questions raised here today are not intended to revisit any particular incident, but they are there and intended to ensure that every case and every future case follows the right procedure. If today's deliberation reveals gaps in our laws, our policies, or coordination between our institutions, Madam Chair, then it's our responsibility to address them. The people of Sint Maarten deserve a justice system that is transparent, accountable, and worthy of their trust. That is the standard that I will strive to uphold, Madam Chair. And again, I want to say, Madam Chair, through you, to the Minister, I really thought you was coming here in a different tone. And the reason why I say that is because of the current situation and the current situations that we could foresee in the future if certain things are not addressed. And for me, Madam Chair, I told people this over and over because somebody reached out to me after my notifications last week, and I said this straight up. I don't know Ryan, rest and bless him, and he didn't know me. But something just don't go down my throat, Madam Chair, when I hear the different explanations, and I genuinely want to understand if anything could have been done differently through you to the Minister. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you, MP Duran, for your questions and comments. The next speaker is MP Lacroes. MP Lacroes, you have the floor.
Madam Chair Lady, a blessed afternoon to yourself, to the griffier, to the Honorable Minister of Justice, her support staff, those in the Tribune, my fellow colleagues, those watching on social media. Madam Chair Lady, I'm going to start by echoing the same statement that the previous speaker made. I thought this meeting would have gone different. Madam Chair Lady, I sat here listening, and I somewhat got very irritated. I have a perfect, in my opinion, working relationship with the Minister of Justice, with her staff. But what I heard today, I don't even know what to say about it. Madam Chair Lady, the minister's last quote, behind every solution named today is a family that needed it sooner. Let us not do this. Let us do this work together so that every year the number is smaller and the year after that smaller again. Madam Chair Lady, we are here today because we called this meeting. The first question I'll ask the minister, has the minister ever made it known what we heard here today? Legislation is there and there's no money to pay for it. And if the minister has done so, to whom? Because I have never heard this before. Madam Chair Lady, it cannot be that after something happens, this information comes forward. And this is not just an advice to this minister, the Minister of Justice, but to all ministers. If you are encountering a problem that you need help, the way it comes across today, as if it's a budget problem, then do not wait until last minute, because then it looks as if we're just deflecting and we're blaming everything and everyone else except who's responsible. Madam Chair Lady, I am one of those that ask a lot of questions because I do the work paying attention to the budget and seeing and making and bringing ideas and amendments. I have not heard this at any time before. Madam Chair Lady, the coalition exists. It's 9 members. I cannot understand in no way whatsoever what the minister is saying that we need to bring the amendment. This should have been a solution because the problems are clear. This is a problem of life and death. This should have been on the table. This should have been in this budget. This could have been in the budget before. And if these legislations were in place in 2020, 21, 22, 23, 24, Madam Chair Lady, then I blame everyone that was there before, including my party. If we were there and it never got there before, then there's no excuse. What I am saying today is this should have been in this budget. Madam Chair Lady, we are here today not because there was an accident, because we have had numerous accidents. Many have lost their lives. We are here today because of what transpired, which is simple. An individual had an accident, and the family felt robbed and cheated. Madam Chair Lady, my sentiments, if MP Lyndon Lewis and myself did not make any statements on Facebook, this would have been another case that would have gone straight under the table. And I'm not speaking on behalf of from the minister's perspective, but the only reason we got any response from the OM was because noise was made. And then suddenly there is a pending investigation. And I cannot understand that, Madam Chairlady. I cannot understand that, and I refuse to ever believe that the Minister of Justice would sign off on a deportation document knowing that there's an investigation open. Madam Chairlady, do we have any extradition treaty with Jamaica? Madam Chairlady, how many individuals have been convicted in absentia and came back to do their time? We are all assuming that a crime was committed. Why do I say a crime? If the individual was under the influence and he was drunk and someone lost their life, there's no way I would want to understand that that person could walk away from something like that. I would not want to believe that. And if there's no legislation to be able to convict that person, then, Madam Chairlady, what are we doing? Many believe that legislation is only Parliament. Madam Chairlady, through you, the Minister is fully aware that that is not the case. We are co-legislators. Even when we bring legislation, it still needs to be rectified by the government. And the easiest route to deal with something like that would have been started in Justice, especially because Justice is aware of the problem. Rectified, I'm sorry. A lot of accidents have taken place, and you hear absolutely nothing about it. And if we don't hear anything about it, then we don't know that something went wrong. God bless the individual that took that video of that gentleman leaving the plane, because we wouldn't have been here today. I understood he lost his job. I don't know how true that is. Yammer. Please reach out, see if we could get you a job somewhere else. Job good, well done. Madam Chairlady, it is not only about this accident. The young man that lost his life maybe had on a helmet, maybe his bike was purchased legally, maybe he had a number plate. All of these things are one part of it. But what we saw today, there are a lot of bikes on the road driving with no number plates, driven by young individuals, wheeling, bringing noise pollution, and just adding an extra sense of stress to the community. In the budget, Madam Chairlady, 2025, I mentioned, and the motion that I brought forth to bring extra control on the bikes. There's a part of it that stated, and I mentioned it, the sale of bikes, zero control. It's a year further. As you see, we had 7 and 9, or 5 and 9 deaths in between. Correct me if I'm wrong with the numbers. But it makes absolutely no sense if we continuously take bikes off of the road and then they come in back on the road through the whole other side. Or just illegally, again, no insurance, nothing. Madam Chair Lady, through you to the minister, what went wrong? What went wrong? Did something go wrong? Was the minister aware that there was a pending investigation or not before signing that document? Madam Chair Lady, how many persons who committed crimes in St. Martin have been deported during the last 5 years before serving their full sentence? Or even part of it? Or none at all? How many individuals have been convicted in absentia and subsequently returned to St. Martin to serve their sentence? Madam Chair Lady, and my fellow colleague asked it before in an interruption, what is actually needed? What is the bill on that legislation? Please provide it to Parliament. We should have had that already. Madam Chair Lady, while in Grenada, we took a tour. I saw 0 bikes in Grenada. And when we asked the driver, hey, why are there no scooters? He said, we had too much debts. Madam Chair Lady, I believe, and it's not a popular comment to make because there are a lot of people that like their motorbikes. But at some point, the government needs to decide if you cannot handle this responsibly, we will have to pull back on it until we could find a way to deal with this because people are dying. People that are actually not even involved with bikes. Pedestrian lost their life. So at which point will the government decide, hey, enough is enough? Madam Chair Lady, in Colombia, where I spent a little over 3 weeks, at no point I saw a motorbike rider without a helmet. 3 weeks on the streets, 0 riders without a helmet. Madam Chair Lady, at no point I saw a motorbike or a scooter with 2 riders, 2 male riders on one bike. The reason why they did this is because 2 male on a bike could be a robbery. So it would be a male driving, a female in the back. We have ample examples of things that work. Madam Chair Lady, and I said it before, if you park at any one of our borders with the front side, you will see the bike riders putting their helmets on to go onto the front side and taking it back off when they go back to the Dutch side. Why? Madam Chair Lady, the question to the minister is, why does she think that happens. What I expected to hear, Madam Chair Lady, today was simple. We thought at this point that it was easier to deport this gentleman, have him come back, if this is the case, for his own safety. If I heard that, I could understand. Because the outrage from the community and the anger was real. I understand that. I would understand that. Madam Chair Lady, and there isn't any one of the family members that would not have understood that. They would. But the way it was done, it came across a little sneaky. And sneaky make me think I have no faith. So literally, you could kill my family member and have a vacation back at home. A lot of times, it is not about what took place, but the fact that people don't know what is happening is what causes the confusion and causes the frustration. We don't want that anymore. Madam Chair Lady, the minister has always said she's outright. She comes and she gives the information. She doesn't run from Parliament, and I've never felt that way either. But Madam Chair Lady, through you to the minister, don't wait until Parliament calls you. The minister can also request a meeting with Parliament and say, hey, even if this is a touchy subject, I'd like to inform the members of Parliament in closed doors on what is actually taking place. That is my advice to the minister. And I'd like to hear from the minister actually what transpired with this specific case. And if the minister thinks or feels this is not something that I could discuss because it is a pending case, then tell us that, minister. Tell us that. Tell us that. Tell the public. Tell the families. This is what is taking place. I cannot. And this would have been avoided. Madam Chair Lady, I did not know the individual personally, but I know his family. One I refer to as Mom. I've never, ever in my life called her by her name. Because her sons are like my brothers. So when I meet her and she cries out to what took place, it hurts. And then many believe this is, plain politics. No, because today is them, tomorrow is my family members. Tomorrow, Madam Chair Lady, through you, it could be a family member of the minister itself. Would it have been handled the same manner? And that is what everyone needs to hear. Yes, it would have. Yes, it took place. It happened before. This is what we did. This is what we did. And why didn't we avoid it from ever happening again? Thank you, Madam Chair Lady.
Thank you, MP Lacroes. We'll adjourn for 5 minutes. Meeting adjourned for 5 minutes. Parliament, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to this public meeting of Parliament. We had a brief adjournment because we thought there was a little technical issue. If there was, that has now been helped, and we continue with this meeting. We were in the process of the members of Parliament speaking, asking questions, and reacting to the presentation given by the Minister of Justice on the matter at hand. This is a public meeting regarding matters of justice, and we now continue with the next speaker, and that is MP Irian. MP Irian, you have the floor.
Good afternoon again. Minister, thank you for the presentation. Minister, I was wondering how you knew that I knew a little bit of Morse code, because I started to see you blinking, and tapping, and I realized what you were telling me was, help me, help me. Because the whole presentation, or your whole presentation was basically, members of Parliament, I need help. Members of Parliament, I need help. And you started off with the budget, and it's very interesting to me, and even the point regarding the bill that was on screen, the document that was unpaid, and you asked Parliament for us to help you pay. But Minister, through you, Madam Chair, I'd like to ask the Minister, how did you pay Soul Beach? Because he did not come to Parliament to help pay that. And again, it's not my words. These are the words of the budget that you and the Council of Ministers approve. And it's the words of the higher council, the Ravana Vice, the Council of Advice, that says in the budget that's here in Parliament, that the government made a decision without the authority of Parliament to pay over $500,000, I believe it was, to an entity that's not in the budget. So when you're saying you need Parliament's help, I don't believe that. I don't believe that, because the Council of Ministers have proven that when it comes to FET, it was important. But I believe also if it's important to pay for a FET, it's also important to be able to save a life or lives going forward. Through you, Madam Chair, I'd like to ask the Minister, is the Minister aware of the comments from the Ravana Vice? Because it was not only Soul Beach, it was other items in the budget that were also paid, where the Council of Advice doesn't just say that it was not of Parliament, without our authority. It said it was basically illegal. And they also asked, what are you going to do about it as a government? The government just said, noted, thanks. Moving on. Through you, Madam Chair, I'd like to ask the Minister, is the Minister aware of and this is very interesting because it comes from a particular party that's very big on procurement, the PFP party. Through you, Madam Chair, I'd like to ask the Minister, are you aware that the Ministry of Rummy is being audited right now for hiring companies or making payments without going through procurement process? Again, I could go down a list of items, and it's going to be very interesting when it comes to budget debate about payments being made without the authority of Parliament, without the budget. So, Minister, I want to help you. But the Council of Ministers already have helped themselves many a times. So, again, I don't believe that things can't get paid. What I believe is the government doesn't think it's a priority. And those are not only my words, those are your words, because you're saying the Council of Ministers approved 2026. The Minister of Finance has said that the Council of Ministers has unanimously approved, all 7 ministers approved the budget 2027, and now we're saying, members of Parliament, I need help.
MP Irian, with your indulgence, I'll allow MP Lacroes to make an interruption. MP Lacroes.
Thank you, Madam Chair Lady. Madam Chair Lady, I need to highlight something that MP Irian just mentioned. Nowhere in the budget there's anywhere where government owe anybody. And this was a discussion that we've had, and I asked it. So where is that in the budget? A budget that has a surplus. I don't understand it. Thank you, Madam Chair Lady.
Thank you, MP Lacroes. MP Irian, you may continue.
Thank you, MP. Madam Chair, so again, I want to help the minister, and I believe others want to help also, but I'm not just saying that I want to help, Madam Chair. Some of us then are members of Parliament of Action, because the minister also mentioned we don't have the budget, we don't have any revenue. But the minister, I must assure you, Madam Chair, I know obviously also realized that the budget came in with no revenue generating measures. 2024, 2025, 2026, none. Good. But Parliament wants to help, because we called a meeting from over a year ago related to revenue generating measures. But guess what? The minister said she's not coming. Both ministers said they're not coming. They have other priorities. Over a year ago, Parliament wants to help, and I want the general public to understand that Parliament wants to help. We want to help fix the budget. We all have ideas on revenue generating, but the coalition, the government, the ministers does not want Parliament help. So again, Minister, I believe you had the right intentions with your presentation, but I don't believe that the government wants help. Otherwise, they would execute. Through you, Madam Chair, I would like to ask the minister, which legislation is being done right now by the Ministry of Justice? Where is it in the timeline, the process? And when can we expect it in Parliament? Because we are ready to support and get it approved. Through you, Madam Chair, the minister also mentioned legislation in this Parliament. I agree. And that's why I believe, Madam Chair, when we have to vote on committees, etc., that let's put people there that want to push these committees. Because, Madam Chair, the Committee of Justice falls under your ministry. We haven't discussed any legislation, any urgent topics in the Committee of Justice related to anything that's in your presentation. I want to help, Madam Chair. I do. But I don't have any documents. I don't have priority. I don't get any letter from the Minister of Justice. I don't know if it's going to the Justice Committee, Madam Chair, but I don't get them. The tools are there, and they lie with the coalition. It's right there. So I don't believe the story on the presentation. Because if that story was true, we would see it in real life. The MPs are here to work with some of us. So again, Madam Chair, the presentation for me, it triggered me because it sends a false narrative to the public, right? And it makes members of Parliament look even worse. But it makes the government look what's so raw. Madam Chair, the minister basically indicating that the government is not prioritizing the important issues. The minister mentioned to you, Madam Chair, that the Ministry of Justice is not in charge of events, etc., etc. But on the other hand, there's an article, a press release, and an interview where the minister mentioned, even in press briefing, that every event needs a permit from justice. And that's a fact. That's not my words, Madam Chair. So if every event needs a permit from justice, then government is in control. So then justice is in control. Because then we have to then say, no, we cannot have this event, and that has happened. I remember in our council of ministers, we had a maybe back and forth, and we would say, hey, the police give advice, and they would say, hey, we can't do this unless we get the resources. And for you, Madam Chair, I would like you to even go back, Minister of Justice, and ask the Carl John about that. We had events, and what we had to do? We had to go and find the money, pay overtime, pay for food, pay for this, pay for that, if we wanted this event to happen. And it came out of the ministry that was responsible. So I don't think it's an issue of just Parliament. I think it's an issue of leadership. I think the Council of Ministers lacks leadership. I think the Council of Ministers lack vision. Because they're not able, and I also believe they lack not working in silos. They lack teamwork. Madam Chair, we have a Minister of Justice, a former Minister of Justice here, former Minister of Justice here, former Minister of TIAT, former Minister of TIAT, former Minister of Finance. It's not like we don't understand or know how the Council of Ministers work. So when I hear, Madam Chair, that the Minister of Justice says, I'm not in control of my own budget or the rest of my budget, it's almost to me like this Council of Ministers has a dictatorship. Because even MP Lacroes, when he was in Chief of Staff, MP came to me and said, Minister, I would like to see this in the budget. I said, MP, no problem. Find the money. The MP went, he found the money, it was approved. Former Minister of Justice said, Minister, we need to find money, we got to pay the police. Get it done. and I must give kudos to the staff of the Ministry of Finance who worked tirelessly to get this done, and they were paid. I could go down the line of different ministers, different MPs that worked with me, and we were able to find the money for the things that we thought were important or prioritized. So again, going back to the presentation, I don't believe that the minister needs Parliament help to execute. I believe that the government, the Council of Ministers, lacks vision, leadership, empathy, and priority. And that's a fact. You could look at the reflection in the budget. Through you, Madam Chair, when the minister mentioned, for example, the Netherlands and the debt, through you, Madam Chair, I know the minister does understand that correlation and causation isn't necessarily the same, and vice versa. So yes, the Netherlands has 800 deaths. Look at the population size versus our population. If we're going to use data, we can use the data on the full spectrum. Look at the population size, look at the population size. But on the other hand, we could also say, wouldn't the deaths have increased if they didn't have these things in place? Maybe they'd have gone from 800 to 5,000. So yes, correlation, causation, and vice versa. No, we have to give the full story. So I agree with the minister. Yes, it's a good answer, but is it a factual answer? That's the difference. Through you, Madam Chair, we see across the world, right? Anywhere where we put in stronger legislation in certain areas. No, I make a joke with some of my friends. I say, how come now you go to Dubai, all of a sudden you know all the rules? Because why? Because they're strict info. You can't even hold hands in Dubai if you're a couple. You can't kiss each other, you can't show affection. So you leave St. Martin, and you're able to just apply all the rules of another country. Why? Because the rules exist. I remember once I was walking in New York before they made jaywalking legal. A friend put me, don't cross the road, and St. Martin just cross the road wherever. They say, hey, that's jaywalking. I said, jaywalking? Nobody, Jay ain't walking with me, right? Why? We know automatically when we go to another country, these are rules that apply, and we apply them. So yes, if we have different strong legislation, the necessary legislation, and I would want the minister, she had some in the presentation, to send to Parliament the areas. Through you, Madam Chair, I'd like to ask the minister, the Ministry of Justice, to highlight areas in our current legislation that us, as members of Parliament, could discuss, start the discussion in the Committee of Justice and move up onwards to be able to amend those laws so that we can help the minister. Because I want to help. Through you, Madam Chair, I'd like to ask the minister, Minister, I want you to help me. I want you to help me. And I would like you have come on Thursday, you have come on next week Tuesday, you have a whole, there's going to be at least 8 more comms before the O.E.C budget debate. I would like you in the Council of Ministers to plead with the Minister of Finance to allow us as members of Parliament, at least on the opposition side, who believes in amendments, to allow us to amend the budget that you are pleading with us at least 6 times already to amend the budget for you. Because the Minister of Finance came here in her presentation and basically advised against, pleaded with us as members of Parliament not to make amendments to the budget 2026, Minister, through you, Madam Chair. So it's very concerning to me that the Minister of Justice sits down here today, Madam Chair, with all good intentions and says, Parliament, I need your help, bring amendments, use your right. But on the other hand, we have the Minister of Finance who's in charge, supported by the coalition, saying, don't make no amendments. Please leave it as is. So who I should listen to, who I should believe? So Minister of Justice, Madam Chair, I'm begging you. I am now begging you and asking you, please, fight for me. Fight for me because I want to help you and I want to make amendments. And I've done it before. And I'm a man of my word and I will stick to it. You can hold me to that. Please, because last year's budget debate is a discussion from the chair and other members also saying, don't make amendments to the budget, leave it alone. So I don't know what's going on with this coalition. It's more like a collision. So when the minister, Madam Chair, mentions in the presentation that if Parliament is serious, if we are serious, that we would amend the budget. Madam Chair, I will throw that back on the Council of Ministers in the coalition. If the coalition believes in the presentation of the Minister of Justice, if the coalition wants us to amend these laws, if the coalition wants us to find a budget to put by justice to help the minister, if the coalition wants revenue-generating measures, please support us. If you are serious, if the government is serious, the Council of Ministers is serious. According to MP Ottley, only we can save we, and we are Parliament. Madam Chair, through you, the minister mentioned that enforcement in one area means less somewhere else, and I agree. So, again, we have to deal with the resources that we have. It can be then that the Ministry of TIAT approves all these events, like the minister outlined, right? But then to come to us and complain, we can't, that's the area we can't help you with, through you, Madam Chair. We can't help the government with policy and legal and matters of execution. We can only support with amendments and budgets and hold the government accountable. If they even show up to the meeting that we call, if they even do that. So, through you, Madam Chair, I'd like to ask the minister, because the Minister of TIAT disagreed with the Minister of Justice in terms of permits. So I want to confirm, Minister of Justice, to you, does every single event in St. Martin need a permit from the Ministry of Justice, as stated by the Minister of Justice? So that's indoors, at least. Every event, does that need that? And through you, Madam Chair, does the minister agree with the Ministry of TIAT that it's not necessary and they are in control of events? Or does an individual or entity needs approval on both sides? Through you, Madam Chair, the minister mentioned that we crushed 160 scooters and 160 on track for this year. So what, as Parliament, what can we do to help strengthen the legislation or areas that you say, hey, we have scooters uninsured? What are the tools that the ministry needs to be able to help the minister? Minister, you know, we have a family here. We had a situation, and one of the reasons why MP was called this meeting. There were a lot of things going around, and even something that you said in your presentation that was conflicting the prosecutor, where the prosecutor mentioned there's no evidence of this, you mentioned it was overtaken. So I just think for the general public, there needs to be some type of clarity to certain things. We saw a video of deportation, et cetera, et cetera. Some people say it was not deportation. Some say, yes, it was. I don't feel comfortable as a member of Parliament because I don't have the answers. So I can imagine everybody else. And I think and even if it's not today, at some point in time, we need to get some type of clarity, right, or indication as what is a fact and not what is a good answer. What is a fact and not what is a good answer? I don't want an answer that makes me feel good. I want a truthful, factual, and honest answer. Through you, Madam Chair, I want to say that I agree with the Minister of Justice that the officers of a justice force, they deserve gratitude for all the hard work they put in. But I also know, and every time I talk to an officer, they don't want just claps anymore. They don't want a pat on the back anymore. When I had some officers come to me the other day and say, you know, we buy our own handcuffs. We buy our own clubs. And they understand that maybe the government don't have money, so they're going to buy it themselves. But it's not in the budget. It's not being budgeted for. But worse yet, on top of that, and I've even helped one of them with this process, they're not even being reimbursed. So I spend my money, I buy a handcuff, I buy a club or boot, I buy my steel toe boots, I buy my security pants. I say, hey, I spend this money, I want reimbursement, and it's told to them they're not even able to get reimbursed. Not even say 3 months down the line, 6 months down the line, no. It's a flat out no. So through you, Madam Chair, I'd like to ask the Minister, is this a fact? Does our officers buy their own clubs, boots, security pants, steel boot shoes, etc.? Is that mandatory or compulsory by any policy or legislation? And can they be reimbursed? Is there any budget in 2026 for this? And if not, would you want to see an amendment for that? Madam Chair, that's the opinion of the Minister. Would you want to see an amendment for that to support these officers? And if so, what is that amount? Madam Chair, the Minister also mentioned, with all these traffic accidents, etc., that we are lacking road signs, etc. When it comes to the Ministry of Roaming, that's a whole other story. But 1 minute. Thank you, Madam Chair. Let me run up by saying this. Through you, Madam Chair, Minister, again, you have the support of me as a member of Parliament for sure. I want to support. I'm asking you to help me support you. And this has nothing to do with the police force, the justice force in general, because I believe they work hard. I believe they deserve what's due to them. And again, I end by saying this. I believe this is a leadership in a council of ministers issue that cannot solve the issues that matter to the most of this country. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, MP Irian. We continue with members of Parliament, and I give the floor to MP Lewis. MP Lewis, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I would like to say 3 short quotes by Dr. Martin Luther King. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. Justice too long delayed is justice denied. True peace is not merely the absence of tension, it is the presence of justice. Madam Chair, I've listened to the presentation of the Minister of Justice, but you can fool some of the people some of the time, but you can't fool all the people all the time. Minister of Justice, I had about 40 questions prepared, but I seem that I have to deviate from those questions. Based on your presentation, and like you say in Dutch, you're uitlatingen. Minister of Justice, I will go on to a point where you mentioned that the provisions of the law and the provisions of the law and the law needs to be amended, etc., Madam Chair. Madam Chair, we have laws already. We must stop trying to misinform the public. Yes, the traffic law is outdated, but we have laws. What you also fail to understand, Madam Chair, is that I was just not only the Minister of Justice. I grew up in the police force of the Netherlands Antilles that turned into the police force of St. Martin. And when testing a drunk driver, the law provides, and please correct me if I'm wrong, because my supervisor is sitting down right there, Ms. Keisberta. We can test them by the watery tongue. We can make them walk in a certain line. We can also have their blood tested. I would like us to go back in time, Madam Chair, hence the reason I spoke about class justice. The former Minister of Romy had a fender bender. And the prosecution made sure he was dragged straight to the extent of the law, where his blood was tested for alcohol and he was convicted. So who are we trying to fool here today? Madam Chair, no immigration deportation law can supersede a criminal investigation. Never, ever. Minister, my colleague Duran spoke about honesty. In other words, he said the truth. Minister of Justice, people like to talk about grandstanding, talk about politics, all kind of nonsense. But I have represented this country in many different aspects, even in standing up in that court next door without a law degree. And I've beaten many lawyers over 100 times. So this person cannot be fooled. If you did not know, the victim mother worked in the court system for many years. Minister, I contacted you personally because I don't want nobody to say tomorrow that Lyndon is grandstanding. I made an effort and I reached out. I also indicated to you that I am not contacting you to discuss an investigation. We basically spoke briefly, and in that content, I mentioned that the individual, I understood that the individual was going to be released and turned over to the Immigration Department. And I said, if that is the case, Minister, this is prematurely, and I will repeat so that the public can understand, prematurely being done if there's an active investigation. Madam Chair, when I stood here, or sat, and I mentioned that on the floor of Parliament, I understood that the Immigration Department was going with the individual to the airport that same minute. The people of this country, some reached out to me, angry with immigration officers. I said, why are you guys angry with immigration officers for? Why did they deport him? I said, but the immigration officers are carrying out their duty. How you mean they're just carrying out their duty? The man was arrested and a case is pending. Again, I will reiterate, a case is pending. I said, do you all know who is responsible for deportation? Do you know who signs off on deportation? The Minister of Justice. I was also the Minister of Justice. All 10 at night, 11 at night, I was called even to sign off on deportations, Madam Chair. Again, I will sit here, and this meeting was called because I wanted to hear the plan of the minister. Madam Chair, I haven't heard any plan. I haven't heard any plan. The minister sat there with no plan. The minister came in here to tell us as honorable members what we need and should do. Madam Chair, the Minister of Justice is a meester in rechten, is a master of law. The Minister of Justice, Madam Chair, as far as I know, was busy with projects and legislations in the past. The Minister of Justice sits here and try to twist and turn things that we, as members of Parliament, need to come with legislation. The Minister of Finance comes here, moreover, in this honorable House, with law initiatives for this country. My question to the dear Minister of Justice, what law initiative have you come forward with as a lawyer, as a justice minister, for the betterment of this country? I will deviate. What revenue-generating measures have the Minister of Justice come forward with to move this country forward for the betterment of her department, or her departments, the biggest ministry? Minister of Justice, I could remember my last day in office, busting my backside. I met you in the hang, and I told you we need to sit and talk for the progression of the ministry. We're going on 2 years later, Minister, we have never sat with your team moving forward on how we can move this country forward. I also indicated to you, for example, Minister, about the dispensation letters, where one can request to remain on the island pending their residency. I said we are signing these things for free. That is a way you can generate money in this country to charge an outsider who wants to stay in this country to make money for this country. The minister said here, me, I would never, ever talk of brother and sister in blue, because I have worked in that organization and I've been paid in that organization for 18 years. Again, Madam Chair, as a former police officer, no, I'm actually still a police officer, because I have a leave of absence to sit in this honorable House. My colleague asked a question about Where in the law? Or in other words, how does one carry how do they afford to carry a weapon stock? Do they get it from out of a magazine or they purchase their own? Madam Chair, I personally bought uniform pants, uniform shoes for myself as a police officer, and as a minister out of my own pocket, when I see officers come to my office with a tongue-open shoe, with dirty uniform, to make sure that they could go in Cold Bay to get something out of my pocket. Not because of politics, because I love the ministry that I worked for many years. With all the things that I had to put up for. But when I see a minister of justice that we have currently, I do not see, like we would say, the holding of a police officer, the way you carry yourself as a police officer. You're supposed to see that authority figure. With this minister of justice that we have, I do not see it. We are sitting down here in a serious setting. But yet, Minister of Justice, you had a smirk on your face. You had a smirk on your face that disturbed the people in this honorable house. Minister, again, I'm going to tell her, I sit down very here riled up, and I had to take deep breaths before saying that thing to speak. I am derailed today from what I wanted to say because of your behavior sitting down in this honorable house. Again, I don't care who like me or who don't like me, Madam Chair. I came here for St. Martin and not to be friends with my colleagues. I came here to make a difference in this country. And when I call a minister, or I caucus with my coalition, with the coalition that is next door, we need answers. I don't come up here, I didn't sit down here and type these 40 questions, Minister. And there's many more. Minister, this meeting was called, you know why? Because I am a parent. Through you, Madam Chair, I am a parent. And some of us who don't have children do not understand what it is to empathize with others. And from the time we cannot empathize with others, especially when you're leading a country, you need to go. That is my humble opinion. We're not in here to sit down because we have status. We're not in here to sit down because they call it the honorable house. The institution is honorable, but me, Lyndon Lewis, as an individual, ain't honorable. I am not honorable. I am a human being that have faults and flaws, and so do you. You sit down here and you said you do not want to deflect, but you have deflected straight through. You have passed the blame on to all your other colleagues because of legislation, because of infrastructure. One of my questions to you, since the traffic department has sent requests through you, Madam Chair, I would like to know how much reports were sent with regarding to the infrastructure of this country from the traffic department. Madam Chair, again, we here look like we want to fool the people about legislation and twist and turn this thing. But where there are no traffic signs, what other law goes into play? There's something called the speed limit in the Babodacom, in the Babodacom. I want somebody to correct me if I'm wrong. Because there is a speed limit in built-up areas, whether there's a sign or not. And there is a speed limit, whether there's a sign or not, out of built-up areas. And I think I didn't have to go to traffic school to learn that, because everybody in here, most of us have a driver's license. And you were taught. So nobody can tell me that if you are driving in a built-up area, overtaking a set of vehicles, and like I say, the minister has more information than the prosecutor's office, like my colleague said. Because I personally spoke to police officers, Madam Chair. I don't just come here, sit down and make up story and speak. And officers at Plaza told me they are the ones called an individual and said, give yourself up. Officers at Plaza said they gave on information about witnesses to the traffic department and do not understand where those witnesses disappear. But yet, I saw something else in the article of the prosecutor's office. Madam Chair, through you, Class Justice, Minister, through you, Madam Chair, I understood that you are denying migrants and putting them in positions to be separated from families. I don't work in the department. I was telling you this is what I understood. This is the information that I received. Revenue generating measures. Police officers need to be paid, prison officers need to be paid, custom officers need to be paid, coast guards need to be paid, you name it. I think it's about 9 departments you have fallen under you. When the courthouse come with a budget, the Minister of Justice have to approve it. When the prosecutor's office come with a budget, the minister has to approve it. How come they don't get what they want? How come Minister of Justice, through you, Madam Chair, the prosecutor's office and the courthouses get what they want? But what the rest of the justice workers need is not given. How hard are you fighting to have the needs of your departments accomplished? Through you, Madam Chair, the minister also mentioned in her presentation that 332 FTEs or positions basically have to be available within CAPESM. You said 189 includes police officers and include administrative workers. You also mentioned that this is backdating from 10-10-10. Madam Chair, consecutively, I think in October, September of this year, the Chief of Police will be 11 years in that seat. Since 10-10-10, we only had 2 Chief of Police, Madam Chair. Who is responsible, Minister of Justice, for the recruitment drive to fill those FTEs? Because according to me, it is the Chief of Police, Carl John. According to me, that people last long at Burger King and McDonald's, longer than in the police force. My question to you, Madam Chair, through you, to the Minister of Justice, why is that? How many police officers have resigned since, again, 2015, September to now? I wanted to tell the people then, because in our ministry, we should want competencies. In our ministry, we should want expertise. We don't want nobody sit in a position and be complacent. I have grown within the police organization, just like many others. The good lady sitting there next to you might be our next chief of police in this country. Because I've also seen her with stripes to stars and balcony, Madam Chair. We need vibrant people who will stand up and lead our country and push it forward. We are not here to sit along and to get along. If the chief of police is not functioning to bring up the FTEs, then he too got to go. If the chief of police, I want you to tell me, Matt, how much officers are currently, for example, suspended? Or not suspended, sorry. Active investigations are on police officers, Madam Chair. And I understood some of them are just working like nobody business. What type of, because we have lack of manpower? How much police officers just sent home for no reason that has no kind of documentation, the reason why they are home? Because they are fighting for a position or a rank in court? But somebody who's under criminal investigation or even got sentenced because they appeal it, they're still working in a police station. But other officers who don't have no type of investigation on them are sitting home. So the bad eggs is allowed to work, and the ones fighting for their rights have to stay home. What type of justice do we have within the Ministry of Justice, Madam Chair? Madam Chair, I would like the Minister of Justice to tell me what type of message she is sending this family today. You want me to explain you why I'm asking that? Because we did mention there are accidents that happen all the time. Accidents happen all the time where death happens, Madam Chair. But Minister, the problem is not about the accident, because the young man will not come back alive today. The problem is the manner of which you handle the situation, which I find was very dishonest, because at least you could have said, cat dog, MP Lewis, such and such is the case, I have no choice, he have to be deported or whatever. My colleague said it could have been a serious matter where his life, because I also understood that his life was basically threatened. But I did not get that from the Minister of Justice. It is your job to tell the people what is going on in their ministry. The Ministry of Justice does not belong to us. It belongs to the country. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, MP Lewis. The next MP to speak is MP De Wever. MP De Wever, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon to everyone. I just want to start with a reminder of what I said right here when the Marcelina II cabinet started. And I told the Council of Ministers that perhaps they should all get together and focus on the main issues that we have right now in the country at that time, so almost about 2 years ago, which was specifically for the ministries of Rummy and the ministries of Justice. And I think it probably fell on deaf ears, because then maybe we wouldn't be here discussing the shortfalls and the sharing of blame to go around. And I'm not here to really point out and defend the fact that Parliament doesn't have a role and ministers don't have a role, but I will clarify a couple things from this presentation today. And I want to remind the public of what MP Arian said. He said, this Council of Ministers lacks vision. This Council of Ministers lacks empathy. This Council of Ministers lacks, what else was it? Leadership. This Council of Ministers lacked priority. He said those words, and then he repeated something again at the end. And all I could say was, no, the Council of Ministers don't lack those things. They lack chutzpah. They lack gall. They lack extreme boldness. You want to know why? Because when I was minister, that same extreme boldness is what I had with you. When we had no money, we needed a 7-year project that no TEAT minister could do before. We had no money. We had maybe about $6.5 million left for capital expenditures, and it was during COVID. And I remember telling the minister then, which was Ardwell, the Minister of Finance, I said, if you don't give me this money for this project that is 75% paid by France, I said, I'm going to go public, and I'm going to tell the world that this minister didn't give it to me on a 7-year project that we actually needed for a radar, which is for our safety. That's exactly what I want to remind people of, why you need extreme boldness as a minister. So when you come and you try and share the blame, you can't share the blame really when the ministers lack chutzpah. That's exactly what's happening here in this Council of Ministers. So I get it. I get what the minister said here today. I get it. I get the presentation. And one thing I will commend the minister for is that I finally see a minister come and tell us that this bill wasn't paid, and that's why we couldn't get legislation. But as a parliament, our role here is literally only to approve a budget. But there's a word. There's a crap in a budget, crap out of a budget. So if you don't give us the information that we need to make proper decisions in a budget, how do you expect us to know that government has a bunch of outstanding bills and legislation that's pending? Today was the truth coming for the first time. Go ahead, MP Arian. Thank you, Chair Lady. Sorry, I forget I'm not the chair today. Go ahead.
Thank you, MP De Wever. And with your indulgence, I'll allow MP Arian to make an interruption. Thank you. MP Arian, you may make your interruption.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I'm happy that MP De Wever mentioned, because as I mentioned, how we operate in the Council of Ministers, but I don't want to sound like it was a threat just happened and the money showed up. We worked together to ensure that it's on the budget, and not only that, it was executed. Because one of the conversations we had with all the ministries was, you could want what you want, but show me how it would get done. And that's how we worked when we were there. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, MP Arian. MP De Wever, you may continue.
Thank you for the interruption. The point was that, the point that I was making, Madam Chair Lady, was that the ministers need to be very brave to open up their mouths when things aren't working. It wasn't about the fact that I gave a threat. It wasn't that, but I was willing to be brave, to go public if I didn't get what was priority for the ministry and actually for the island. And we needed that because the French side relies on us, Sabre relied on us, Statia relies on us, St. Bart's relies on us, Anguilla relies on us. So it had a big risk factor associated with it. But I want to go back to the invoice that was unpaid. And I want to send a message through you, Madam Chair Lady, to the Minister of Justice and the rest of the Council of Ministers, that when you come to present the budget in our public meeting, make sure show us the full picture. Because what we have is what you give us. Crap in, crap out. We could ask a bunch of questions, but if we don't know what's outstanding, if we don't know what your plans are, how do you expect us to know that a bill is unpaid? We're not executive. We're not. When we get the budget, we don't get a budget attached with a bunch of invoices because that's not our role. Our role is to approve it. That's what we do here. So I can't work with a budget that doesn't show me the true picture. So what I want to tell the Council of Ministers once again is they always come with pretty presentations, right? What we did, what we're planning on doing, but it's already July 2026, so I know that we only have maybe 5 months left of the year, right? Pretty much, practically. But when you come, give us the true picture. Do exactly what this Minister of Justice did. Give us the true picture of all the things that government didn't pay and all of the hindrances and the blocks it's causing and us actually allowing our country to work perfectly, to function efficiently. But if you don't tell us what is outstanding, I don't know from the budget, and the budget is even shorter than it was in the previous years. But you look at it, it's high level. And if you don't know how to read a budget, and if you don't have no background, then they're gonna say that I'm wasting their time when I ask for invoices that make up every number here that is just a total. They have to give us the information. And that's what I wanted to get out and get a message out from this presentation here today. Thanks very much, Madam Chair Lady.
Thank you, MP De Weaver. We continue with the members of parliament, and at this time, I give the floor to MP Kotai. MP Kotai, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon to you, to the Minister and her staff, and those in the tribune. Madam Chair, before addressing the specific matter on the deportation before us today, I would first like to speak to the broader issue that this debate highlights. One of the reoccurring challenges facing St. Martin is that our police force is stretched increasingly thin. In addition to their core policing responsibilities, officers are regularly assigned to traffic management duties, taking valuable resources away from crime prevention, investigations, and community policing. During the minister's presentation, reference was made to the need for dedicated traffic enforcement officers and the financial constraints that have prevented expanding that capacity. This raises an important question about how we organize and fund public safety. As I understand it, St. Martin currently has approximately 189 police officers. Through you, Madam Chair, could the Minister also indicate how many VKS officers are currently active and available for deployment? The reason I ask this is because I believe there is a practical funding solution that deserves serious consideration. Rather than placing additional financial burdens on the people of St. Martin, I have asked these questions in writing for the budget to the respective minister, but I will mention it right now. I asked the Minister of TEAT about introducing a $20 visitor driver's license fee similar to Anguilla for tourists renting vehicles on the Dutch side of the island. The revenue generated could be dedicated exclusively to traffic management and transportation improvements. I understand that this proposal is dependent on the response of the respective minister, but just to break down the numbers, we say we are a shortfall of money, but based on the current estimates of annual rental vehicles, say on average 175,000 rentals a year, this could generate approximately $3.5 million US, enough to substantially expand our VKS capacity, place dedicated officers at major traffic choke points, and strengthen traffic enforcement. Turning now to the specific topic before us, the deportation of convicted offenders. It is difficult for our society when individuals who have committed serious crimes or who have been convicted are no longer present to answer for their actions because of capacity constraints or other systematic limitations, especially when the parents of their loved ones have nothing but memories to lean on and a criminal walks free. As a country, we should aspire to a justice system where sentences are served and accountability is maintained. Our people deserve confidence that justice is not compromised because of a lack of prison space or other logistical challenges. I would therefore appreciate if the minister could clarify the legal framework governing these deportations. When an individual is deported while criminal proceedings are still ongoing or before a sentence has been fully served, does the public prosecutor continue the proceedings in absentia? If a conviction is ultimately obtained, what mechanisms exist to ensure that individuals can be extradited or otherwise returned to St. Martin to serve imposed sentences? Through you, Madam Chair, I ask this because this is the second instance. Last year, in the town in Phillipsburg, individuals from Trinidad committed a crime, shot a gun directly at an individual at his business, got deported first, and then sentenced after. The businessman who was shot at, he survived. But Mr. Ryan Gums, a brother to me, he did not. This cannot go on like this. To me, this is injustice. I believe these are important questions, Madam Chair, not only for this particular case, but for the integrity and credibility of our justice system as a whole. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, MP Kotai. We continue, and I give the floor to MP Labega. MP Labega, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Once again, good afternoon to yourself, the Kafir, my fellow colleagues, the Honorable Minister of Justice and Support staff, everybody in the Tribune and at home watching. Madam Chair, I'd like to thank the Minister of Justice for this in-depth presentation. Other than some other ministers feel that the presentation lacked substance or it wasn't on topic, but the actual topic was traffic safety and the increase of recent traffic incidents and accidents. I would like to say condolences to the family of all of the past traffic accidents. As we can see, we have many. And I know over the years, most of us know at least 1, 2, maybe even 3 people that have succumbed to traffic accidents, whether walking, driving, whether their fault or not. So this is definitely a topic that we all need to tackle. As the presentation stated, it is interministerial. It's a broad topic, and it takes all the ministries to come together. Finance, VROMI, TIAT, as well as justice. I would also like to acknowledge that I have reached out to the Minister's Cabinet, specifically to the Minister of Justice and also Mr. Nichols over the last 2 weeks, and they have answered me very promptly and have guided me to try to also come together to solve this problem. We sit here and we have some ministers stating that it's not, in their exact words, Parliament's problem. The Minister of Justice, she could also make the laws, but it's also our job as well. And we also have previous ministers of justice in this honorable house. So they know what they have done and what they haven't done. What have they also done to also create road safety? So it is all of us. It falls with all of our purview. Now, one of the main things I would like to mention is reckless driving. I don't think, and correct me if I'm wrong, that reckless driving is properly stated. What is reckless driving in our law? Because is it overtaking? Is overtaking one car reckless driving? 2, 3, where? Is driving through the median at rapid speeds reckless driving? I would give an instance yesterday. I almost witnessed something very horrific. I was on Coyman Road. I had my window down. I was going to the gym. A lady came off of the bus. She walked behind the bus in front of me to cross the road. I looked at my left rearview mirror. I saw a scooter speeding up the road. I yelled to the lady, hey! I yelled so loud because my window was down. That stopped her from crossing the road. She looked at me, scooter passed full speed. That was right in front of my face. Had I not yelled out to her, it would have been a serious, serious incident. Another incident, school buses. The amount of people I see overtaking school buses is crazy. It's crazy. You know, I grew up in the States, and obviously the school buses have the lights, you have the arm, and everybody know when a school bus stops, you don't cross. Because right now, school buses stops, sometimes they angle in the road, and the students pass in front. So to see this type of reckless behavior is just mind-boggling. And it also comes down to the enforcement part. The enforcement part. We could give a lot of fines, we could raise the fines, but if there's no enforcement, then it's like, okay, I'll get a fine and I'll just keep on going. But if that enforcement arm is strong enough and the fine is strong enough, and it also hits the household, if somebody's underage, then it has to fall on the parents. If somebody is driving somebody's vehicle, it has to fall on the license plate owner. So all these things need to be taken into consideration and properly defined. So I got a lot out of the presentation to what needs to be done. The minister was very honest, whether you like it or not, of the things that needs to be done and what needs to be updated. And all of us in here could add to that and help with that. So I like to take things from a positive standpoint, and instead of looking at what the minister hasn't done and what this one hasn't done, and you came to Parliament, this and that, let's look at what can we take positively from the presentation and expedite whatever needs to be done in a rapid fashion. So with that, Minister, thank you for the presentation. I look forward to working with you and your team and doing what we came here to do. Thank you.
Thank you, MP Labega. Just a reminder, members, as you know, directives or directing your questions or comments to a minister goes through the chair, and there's a reason for that, so that it is not felt as if it's a direct interaction with any minister. Just a reminder as we continue, and I give the floor to MP Roseberg. MP Roseberg, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair Lady. Blessed afternoon once more to the Minister of Justice and her support staff, to my honorable colleagues present here today, to the public in the public tribune, and to the listening and viewing public online. First of all, Minister, through you, Madam Chair, thank you for the presentation. Thank you for all the honesty that was presented in the presentation, and also making it clear what is needed from Parliament, what the ministry is currently working on, and what the current roadblocks are. A lot has been said here today, and I decided to listen because seeing my background, I also know how the reality works and what the different laws state. It is a fact, and we all know that here, and for the ones that don't know it, the laws on St. Martin, several laws are outdated. And often you hear, as a co-legislator, yes, do your job, make sure that you make the necessary changes. In a perfect world, and honestly, when I entered into politics, I thought it was that simple, indeed. But the reality shows that it is not. So now, seeing, I can remember for the introduction class of Parliament, that it was presented that it is a tango, you know, you make sure that you bring certain things forward, you work together with the council where needed, and you make sure that certain laws are being passed. It is something that is easily said, for example, knowing that the traffic ordinance is very much outdated, that members of Parliament should change it. I don't fully agree with that. I do agree with the fact that we as members of Parliament can provide suggestions. Such was done by myself and the ministry, together with the ministry, in regards to, for example, the breath analyzer testing. That's something that came in 2025. I realized, and I saw it in several cases, that, hey, we don't have that opportunity as in other countries within the kingdom. So I sat with the ministry and I looked into the option, okay, is that a possibility? And the ministry was also pro that approach. And we are currently still looking at the possibilities for such. But as was brought forward in the presentation, the current law does not provide that opportunity. And even if we would change said law that is currently in draft form available, then we would have it in the law, but then execution-wise, it is not being able to be executed because the funds are not there. So therefore, on one hand, we need to make sure that the current legislation is updated, such as also the criminal procedure code. Through you, Madam Chair, that's also something that needs updating and that has to be updated since 2019. There's a draft in Parliament, so we need to make sure that that part is being done. But currently, I want to take the approach, and also for the viewing public and in the public tribune, what can we ourselves do at this moment in time? Because that there are a lot of things that are currently not up to date or should have changing is a fact. But I don't want to leave this meeting here today with something I personally already knew and just leave with the other justice meeting without being able to say, hey, we achieved something. So therefore, I submitted myself to the minister in preparation of the budget, and before that, certain suggestions, seeing the rise of the several accidents, because we have seen a rise with deadly accidents. Let me specify that. We have seen also the reckless driving. Recently, I saw a video again where several scooter drivers have been reckless and it has been filmed. We have seen also that several people in the community have shared such video, their input on that behavior. And I'm bringing that forward because we as a community, we have seen how powerful and effective we as a community can be. And therefore, I was brainstorming with others, okay, what can be done? And what doesn't cost money? What does our public on a daily basis is busy with? And that is, for example, social media, and we have seen it. So therefore, I said, let's do something creative by creating a campaign in regards to driving safe, or informing the public about what our current laws are. And that is not something that I myself only have to do. There are others, and I would like to take the opportunity today to ask others as well to contribute towards that movement to make sure that we all doing it together, pending other matters that is being done, as we can see on the presentation. Because the ministry also brought forward in the presentation that awareness campaign is on its way. And that was also one of the suggestions which I brought forward in my letter. Can we make it more visible? Can we inform the public about the current laws, what is currently lacking, what is currently in place, and what is expected of someone who drives a car or a scooter, and what are the consequences if not? Also here today, Madam Chair, it was brought forward in regards to investigations and people leaving the island or people being released. I do believe, through you, Madam Chair, it's important that the ministry, maybe in collaboration with the Public Prosecutor Office, also in that line start an awareness campaign. I have seen that it's being done more, informing the public about what the Public Prosecutor Office does, what the law states. I try to contribute as well with Law 101 videos, but to inform the public, for example, not because someone is released, and I'm not saying it's good someone is released if there's a pending investigation, I'm not focusing on case-to-case basis, but that the public knows that when someone is released or leaving the island because of the fact of immigration-related matters, that does not mean that the case stops there, because that often is being said or taught, but that is not always the case. So that the public prosecutor plays a more active role with the ministry in informing the public, because else we will have a narrative here that, for example, certain articles are being brought forward which don't apply in situations. And I would find it unfortunate seeing that we have a family, a grieving family, and there are other grieving families maybe online and viewing that the narrative is being created that, for example, a wrong article is being used or the wrong law is being followed. So the ministry, through you, Madam Chair, I would like to ask, and I'm also willing to assist if needed, that we have a more proactive approach. And I know the ministry is not going about the communications in case-to-case basis as the role of the prosecutor office, but hopefully the prosecutor office is also logged in, and they will make sure that the public information in basic terms is being brought forward so that it will not live its own life. A lot can be done in proper communication, and sometimes that is lacking. So that is something that I would like to advise the ministry to look into. Also, if the ministry can provide clarity in regards to the pending legislation, for example, the Criminal Procedure Code, if any indication can be given when the ministry is ready to be dealing with that, or if it's still at Parliament, because according to me, we are awaiting for the next steps, or the next steps need to be taking place, and it would be unfortunate if we continue with this outdated legislation, the criminal, as mentioned. Other than that, I'm open to also look with the ministry. I heard the cry. I know justice is being cut, as of other ministries as well. But I believe if there's one thing we cannot save on, it's the safety of the people of St. Martin. I also am aware the current issues that the ministry is facing. So I was wondering if there were, based on the Kingdom Law, Article 43, if there were any discussions with, for example, the Kingdom partners to look into possibilities of assistance. I often say, okay, we don't have to go explicitly to the Netherlands for assistance, but if I look at, for example, the prison, which through the Kingdom, the prison is now finally being updated. So if we are seeing that several members brought it forward that if the police officers are paying for certain basic materials, there's a current need of investing in the justice system. We have heard, for example, that the police station in Philipsburg is now being managed by officers, while that was first in the past done by the prison guards. So that also takes away officers from the street. So if assistance is being asked, has that been asked, or if not, is the ministry looking into the possibility of doing so, seeing the several issues that we are facing and the current hiccups that we are currently having. Other than that, also in regards to this current topic at hand, I'm also looking forward to seeing the possibilities, seeing that we, I believe, need to be creative in how the ministry brought forward the short-term options, the mid-term, and the long-term, that the possibility of short-term options, as I have mentioned as well in my letter to the minister. For example, we have seen the policy plan of the crime fund that has been submitted. There are certain funding abilities if the ministry is looking into, next to the awareness campaign. I don't know if it's coming from the crime fund, but if it's coming from the crime fund, to look into the suggestion to have with the different stakeholders communications in, okay, what is currently lacking, why certain individuals are not wearing any helmets, what can be done to make sure that that is being enforced. Or for example, at night, what is being done, or can we, through the crime fund, if certain road safety measures are not, road safety based on the law are not clear, that we can educate and give course in regards to what the law states and where the individuals are currently lacking. And if you complete such course, that you then will receive a starter's kit as suggested in my proposal. So I'm looking forward to the short-term possibilities. And of course, in regards to the long-term options. It's clear what we need to do. And I want to remind everybody of that set tango. I saw the presentation. I know our role as well as members of parliament, but it would be unfortunate if we would, for example, tackle matters piece by piece. But I do believe that if we currently have a draft available, that we as members can make the necessary adjustments where the law is currently outdated, seeing the other laws in the kingdom so that we can make sure that we on St. Martin are up to par. But we shouldn't use, for example, this meeting to be comparing current laws or to be comparing current legislative matters, the criminal law code versus the Wegenverkeersverordening, because every case is different. And I was very unfortunate knowing what the law state, that the families that are listening and that are present here today leave with the thought of, oh, the wrong article was used. I don't know the details of the case, but the prosecutor office does. And I believe that seeing the misinformation that seems to be there, that a better job needs to be done and communication needs to be better so that everyone knows what the facts are and it doesn't stay in the air what the reality is. And as closing, in all ways that I can assist the ministry in doing so, I'm willing to do so that we can all together be part of a better St. Martin and create solutions that will benefit all the people. Thank you.
Thank you, MP Roseberg. I now give the floor to MP Myers. MP Myers, you have the floor.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, and to you, the Griffier, my colleagues here in Parliament, to the Honourable Minister of Justice, and to those of you in the Tribune, in particular, the Gums family. I would like to start by once again extending my condolences to the Gums family and to all those families who have lost loved ones through traffic fatalities. Firstly, I would like to apologize to the Gums family for having you deal with this situation on top of your grief. I did not know Ryan personally, but I know the Gums family, and I know them well. From Magic, to Lona, to O.E.C, to Arlene, to Miguel, you know, and we could go on and on and on. Mavis, Swinder, I'll get in trouble calling names because it's so much of you. And the relationship goes way back. It goes way back to when Jojo, which is your father, used to cut my hair as a little boy. I'm getting kind of emotional. When I first ran in politics with the DP party, and Erno Sr. went to your mother's house, she says, send Lally boy. Keziah says, send Lally boy. So that's the relationship that I have with the family, and that's how far back it goes. Now, my approach is going to be a little different, Madam Chair. Here, I have a law that was prepared by former MP Claude Peterson. This is the law for DUI driving. St. Martin currently does not, in our legal system, you cannot do a breath analyzation to check your alcohol level. I am proposing to this Parliament here today, join me not only on this law, but wherever you have something that pertains to this case and where we have seen the shortfalls of this case, let's get together, make a law, call it the Ryan Gums law, and this way we know that it's too late for Ryan, but it can't happen again. And that's the approach I would like to take. I am too close with the Gums family to get into the political semantics that I see here, that I've seen here. And I am not going to disgrace the passing of a young man who lost his life tragically I know his wife, Azalea, since she was a little girl. I have a picture here that I just showed my colleague since she was a little girl. It's an unfortunate situation. I could only imagine what it is like for her as a young mother of a little baby that the provider has now gone. To Magic, my good friend, his only son. But again, the tragedy that has impacted this family, and I said it, and I want to make something clear. It is a very difficult time, and it was a very difficult time and hard. And I'm telling you this because I appointed the Minister of Justice. And I've had discussions with her in regards to this case. And now I'm speaking directly to the family because I think, and I know that I have that relationship with them that I can speak directly to them. The decision, once he was released from the prosecutor's office, and they decided that they were not going to pursue any conviction, they turned him over to immigration. The minister had one of two choices. Since his papers were not renewed since 2021, she had a choice to tell him, get your papers in order, and you have 8 weeks to do it, or deport him. She decided to deport him. And I understand the optics of it, but she decided to deport him because she figured that in deporting him, it will hit him where it hurts most, which is in his pocket. But in doing so, because he has businesses here, but in doing so, it also hit the family where it hurt most, is in their hearts. Because the optics of it looked like he committed a crime and he got away scot-free. That is the reality of it. And that's how the optics look. The optics was very bad. And I could imagine, because I put myself in that situation as a father, myself, I would have been on that flight too. You know, so I understand. And I have, my profession in life is a mortician, so I understand grief, and I understand what families go through. I meet families, whenever we meet a family in my profession, we meet them on the worst day of their life. We meet them on the worst day of their life. So I have a couple questions to you, Minister. Just what are the procedures for deportation? There was a former, what is the prosecutor's role in all of this? Because I understand while the minister has her responsibility, I'm missing, you see, Parliament can call in the prosecutor's office to question them on their role. And I have seen people, even members of Parliament, questioned and prosecuted for less. For less. You know, and when what the old saying, where there's a will, there is a way. You know, I've seen it, for example, just a couple months ago, there was an incident with MP Ottley in the Carnival Village, where all indications were that he was parting a fight. But because he was an MP, he was arrested and questioned and then subsequently released. But the fanfare of that whole thing was the MP was arrested. Again, you know, I am not going to put myself in a position, because this is one of the most difficult positions that I have found myself in politically, whereas the party that I represent is the party in charge of justice, and a decision that has been made has affected a family who I care and love about. I care and love very much. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Members, thank you for helping out. But I would ask MP Myers to allow me to give you the floor for interruption, MP Roseberg. MP Roseberg, with the indulgence of MP Myers, you have the floor for an interruption.
Thank you, Chair Lady. No, I just wanted to make use of the interruption, seeing that MP Myers brought forward and he had a call to Parliament in assisting with said legislation, that I'm also on board to do that so that we can really show after this meeting that we are all on board. So I hope that my contribution, seeing that I have 2 interruptions left, now 1, that I can use that to make sure that the MP knows that I'm willing to work together. And I hope others as well.
Noted, MP Roseberg, and thank you. MP Myers, you may continue.
And the question I have, because you made a comment, Minister, in regards to the law, and I understood that you said the law was drafted and then the payment wasn't made, but the impression that was being given here today is that like as if it was last week. Can you give us the year in which that law and legislation was made and the year in which that bill wasn't paid? I asked what is the procedure for deportation. So if someone is caught on the island illegally, what is the procedure? If they're caught and you, sorry, Madam Chair, through you, if someone is caught on the island illegally, what is the procedure for deportation? And if someone has had papers and those papers are expired and then they are caught, what is the procedure for deportation? And lastly, one of my suggestions would be to, and members of Parliament has said, you know, we are willing to assist and help with the payment of the law. Maybe if we can, in our budget that's coming up, we can probably propose that we cut the travel budget of Parliament and then take some of that money and propose for change in the legislation. But I would really like, for the family's sake, that all 15 members of Parliament be on board with this legislation here that we call the Ryan Gums law, that we can ensure that anytime something remotely close to this happens again, all our ducks will be in a row as a government and as an island. I thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, MP Myers. The next MP to speak is MP Janssen. MP Janssen, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair Lady, and good evening to the Minister and welcome, and to the Minister and her support staff, and also good evening to my colleagues and the people in the viewing public, and also those listening online. Madam Chair, I first would like to thank the Minister for her presentation here today. I would especially like to thank the Minister for the data provided today. I have been asking for data, which I know that the Minister has, Madam Chair, and I see some of it presented here today. And during a closed-door meeting of Justice, we were promised crime and accident statistics. And although Parliament is not just is not busy with the day-to-day operations, the oversight function is greatly helped once we have the information. Everyone is wired differently, and for me, I like to get the data, and that assists me in developing whatever legislation that I would like to work on. And so my question today, through you, Madam Chair, is can we receive this data so that we can use it for developing policy and legislation? I am, as the Minister said, that parliamentarians should take the initiative, and I am willing to take that initiative. I was called by various people, especially regarding this last known accident here, this well-known accident, with people accusing the Minister, people saying lots of things. And one thing I would answer, not saying if the Minister, her actions were right or wrong. What I said was what we need to focus on is what are we going to do about it and what can I do about it. And as such, I decided to take up and try to work on legislation, especially legislation as it regards victim and victim support. And I therefore contacted the Victim Support Services for some assistance from them. with regards to how we could, for the future, again, not for this young man, because for him it is too late, but for future families, so that they do not feel as if justice has not been served. I would like to commend the police for the work done so far in regard to the road safety, as we have seen with the numbers that the minister was able to present. When I first started in Parliament in 2024, one of the first meetings was the Budget 2025, and that was in December 2024. During that meeting, I sounded the alarm about the scooters. It had become unbearable to drive on the road. I even shared that 2 times cars that I was traveling in were hit by scooters, one of which happened while I was stationary in traffic in a traffic jam waiting.
MP Janssen, as you just pause there for a second, I'll ask you to give MP Doran a few minutes to make an interruption. MP Doran.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I think somewhere along the line, we are losing the focus in the sense of simple. I'm hearing a lot of reference made on laws, but nobody's referencing the law on two-lating and outsetting, which is the law on admittance and expulsion. This is what we're discussing here in terms of the actions of the minister. That is being questioned here. There's no question on DUI, and we ain't even reached so far yet. A criminal investigation based on the prosecutor's office press release is pending. And what I'm hearing here today is that that was canceled. Maybe that's new information, inside information, hence the reason why the person was released. But that article was released after the person was released and sent on his way. So, Madam Chair, I don't want for us to send a mixed signal to the public. The issue here today is, could the minister have acted differently based on the law of two-lating and outsetting? So let's just be clear. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, MP Doran. I was going to make a comment about just reminding everyone about this agenda point, but I will give MP Myers the floor for an interruption. MP Myers.
Madam Chair, I want to make something very clear from this, because, again, the impression is being given that everything that comes from the prosecutor's office is truthful and is biblical, you know, and so the prosecutor's office made their statement, and that's taken that's how it is, and then we use that as the point of departure. So in that point of departure, we go ahead, but because what they're saying is truthful, it's nothing but the truth.
Thank you, MP Myers. Before I allowed that interruption, I was going to remind the general public that this meeting, as requested by members of Parliament, is to have deliberations with the Minister of Justice on the increase in traffic accidents and road safety concerns and other justice-related matters. So in saying that, I invite MP Janssen to continue with her intervention. MP Janssen.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for that clarification, because I was wondering if that interruption had to do with my speech now, or if it was regarding the speaker before me, but I saw him answer, so I assume that it was directed at MP Myers, because at no time did I mention DUI. What I spoke about was victim support in the case of traffic accidents, and as you mentioned, Madam Chair, that fits completely within the context that we are in today. I have to go back to where I was. As I was mentioning, that I myself was involved in 2 accidents with scooters, where one time I was just sitting in traffic, and one time I was being driven by someone. And it's not, as the minister mentioned today, it's not only scooters. And other colleagues mentioned, it's not only scooters, but we have a increase in the reckless driving. And I wanted to talk about a case where a garbage truck, which is a large vehicle, heavy vehicle that cannot brake on time and does not have the time to maneuver, was basically coming directly at me this week. And the only thing that I could do, that I could think up to do, was to sound my horn and just keep pressing, and just so that they are aware that they are speeding, because it is just so dangerous. And that's why I commend the minister for mentioning that it's all of us in this community. All of us have to take up our responsibility and drive responsibly. We don't have to feel like every time we leave the house, you're scared, or you're very conscious of something can happen. And I look at the pictures that are out there that come out, and there are so many of these cars that you see. Sometimes people probably invest a whole lot of money in their cars. It's of course it's only material, but the damage is every day, and the people really have to look out, because it's not just the cars, but there are people in those cars, there are children in those cars, and that's why I'm asking the public to please be aware you're not alone on the road. I also commend the minister for the classes, not just the fines and the classes. However, a question that I had in the budget, and I'd like to ask again, how many of those fines are being collected? So are people really feeling those fines? Are they through you, Madam Chair, are people feeling the fines? Are people conscious that that measures are taken when they do not abide by the law? The minister mentioned working with the Minister of Romy and even with the Minister of Tiat when it comes to the amendment to the ordinance. Besides the suggested measures that the minister sees and sees as possible within short, I would like to add or emphasize, if this is not already there, to look at declaring the entire Browers Road, Madam Chair, as a dangerous road, not just the junction with Welcalakan Road, and therefore tackle that road as one of the priorities within, with your colleague from Vromi, through you, Madam Chair. I too had a question, in what year was the amendment to the Ordinance Commission, and what year was the invoice received? My colleague already asked, but I still had it written down here. And I echo the sentiment of previous speaker, that we need to know what all is still outstanding to be paid by government. This question was therefore asked in the questions I submitted to government regarding the budget, and I hope that we could get those answers. Just regarding the breathalyzer, I too was aware of the former minister and his troubles with his fender bender at the time, and that he was supposedly tested. And I also was called out in my function as CEO of GEBE for one of our drivers who was also supposedly tested. And that's why I was actually I thought that we had breathalyzers. So for me, that is my biggest surprise, hearing that today, Minister. And I echo the sentiments of MP Myers. If it will take cutting the travel budget of Parliament, I too would support that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, MP Janssen. We continue, and I give the floor to MP York. MP York, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon to yourself, the Minister, Support Staff, honorable colleagues, and the viewing public. Madam Chair, I had and have something prepared, and one thing that I was not going to speak on today was the case of the late Ryan Gums. But something was said by a previous speaker that made me go a different direction with this one thing. Madam Chair, it was made a reference that the decision by the minister to deport the individual was mainly made to hit him in the pocket. That's not something I said. That was what was said by one of the previous speakers. Madam Chair, to hit him in the pocket. Madam Chair, right now, in the detention center in Point Blanche, we have people sitting for white-collar crimes. White-collar crimes. Politicians, business people, who had to pay fines, hit them in the pocket. Who have to sit jail, can't do business, hit them in the pocket. And Madam Chair, after all of that, they still had to sit time. But this individual, because of hitting him in the pocket, gets deported. And Madam Chair, is of no secret to anyone, the individual, the deportee, is a friend of mine, Madam Chair. So even for me to say that the manner in which, or the argument used to come to the decision to deport him, makes it unfair to those going through the justice system and those who right now sitting in the justice system. And Madam Chair, oftentimes, the good MP Myers speaks on the injustices of decisions made by the prosecutor's office, and with that, I'm with him 1,000%. But to stand here today and say the minister made the decision because it was to hit him in the pocket only contributes to the same issues that he always speaks about. Because it's not right, Madam Chair. Have him stay here. I'm not talking about who's right and who's wrong. I'm not trying to litigate the process, but let the process run its course.
MP York, allow me to give MP Myers the opportunity for an interruption. MP Myers.
Thank you. For the sake of clarity, once, and I mentioned this in my deliberation, once the prosecutor's office turned him over to the immigration, and we know, like MP Linda Lewis said, who signs the document for deportation. The minister was left with one of two choices. One of two choices. And that choice was made based on what I feel, not what she felt. She didn't tell me this. What I feel was to hit him where it hurts most, which would be in his pockets. That's what I said.
Thank you, MP Myers. MP York, you may continue.
Madam Chair, if you can't convince him, confuse him. The MP said the decision was made to hit him in the pocket, and that is just wrong. Moving on, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, 2,500 questions. 2,500 questions, Madam Chair. There was an article released recently. The amount of questions posed by members of Parliament to the executive branch as it pertains to the 2026 budget. And of course, you know, there are those who like, there are those who dislike, but the general consensus was that there are too many questions. Madam Chair, for a presentation like what we received today is the reason why we have so many questions. Because, Madam Chair, it can't be that Budget 2024 amendment, Budget 2025, Budget 2026, Budget 2027, all these budgets are approved by the Council of Ministers, of which the minister is a member of, and none of these issues of the what you can do slide were mentioned previously by the minister. Not one. It can't be, Madam Chair, and this is why we have a lot of questions, Madam Chair, it can't be that the same party of the minister is now the chair of the Justice Committee and none of these things has ever been discussed. None, not one. And when we had a justice chair that was actually calling meetings, a person was removed saying, you're calling too many meetings. And now we're sitting here, standing here saying, oh, let's be more proactive. How is it, Madam Chair, how is it that all these things
MP York, I'll allow MP Roseburg an interruption. MP Roseburg.
Thank you, Chair Lady. I just want to make it clear because I don't want the narrative out there that that has been said. I'm currently not the Chair of Justice, but I am in active communication with the Justice Minister in regards to how certain things can be resolved. So I don't want that to be in the air that that is a reason and that that will now be hanging there. But I am trying together with the minister to see where possibilities are there. And lastly, just to make a remark, we also have to be reasonable, and seeing what I brought forward in my moment of talking, and MP Myers mentioned it as well, on one hand, the person could have been deported, and on the other hand, the person could have been released and be free. And that is something what our current reality and our law is working with. And we need to ask ourselves if that would have been a better option. So the law is what the law is, and we should look in where we can make the adjustments and act proactively in such. Thank you.
Thank you, MP Roseberg. MP York, you may continue.
Madam Chair, what I mentioned just now has nothing to do recently with the recent death or anything like that. I'm not standing up here blaming the minister for any death, Madam Chair. But what is something that I constantly keep bringing up is instead of being proactive, we are always stagnant being reactive. Because, Madam Chair, at the end of the day, for the minister to come in and give the type of presentation she gave, basically, I didn't see where she took any accountability for the things that have not been discussed. Because the first thing the minister turns and says is, justice doesn't write its own budget. So to that, Madam Chair, I have one question. Who writes the budget for justice, Madam Chair? Who? Is it the Minister of Finance? Is it the Prime Minister? Who writes the justice's budget? Madam Chair, in the what you can do or what can be done, there were several things that was mentioned that Parliament has mentioned over the last 2 years. As a matter of fact, Madam Chair, the things about the infrastructure, et cetera, those meetings has been requested by this House, by this faction, as a matter of fact, Madam Chair. But then we have to wait a year for the meeting to be called. And then we stand here and say, we need to do things. Madam Chair, every time we do try to do things, it's coalition above country. Madam Chair, it can be 1, 2, 3, 4 budgets have passed now, Madam Chair. And none of these things has been discussed. And then the minister says the votes of the Council of Ministers when it comes to approving the budget is confidential. But Madam Chair, one thing that's not confidential is the voting, how the voting for the 2027 budget went. Here, article, unanimously passed. Unanimously. The minister said today it didn't go that way, potentially. That means somebody is lying. But here's an article that was not refuted, that's in public domain, saying that it was unanimously approved, which means the minister approved her budget, whether she wrote it or not, via you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, the minister came with a lot of examples of the cross-ministerial things that needs to be done from other ministries and all the things that justice is not responsible of, rightfully so. That has to do with ROMI, that has to do with the other ministries. But Madam Chair, my question is, what has been done over the last 2 years to address those same issues? Because I understand the minister came with a couple examples of what they're working on now. I would like to know what has the ministries done over the last 2 years under the oath of samenwerking. Because, Madam Chair, if it's one thing the Prime Minister mentioned was that Simatin people, all they care about is me. That's not my words, that's the words of the Prime Minister. But Madam Chair, I think he was more speaking about his own calm. Because for a minister of the Council of Ministers to come to Parliament to say, I need you guys to fight for my budget, in other words, through amendments, et cetera, basically means the minister can't come to an agreement with her own ministers of the Council of Ministers. An example was named by a former minister, 2 former ministers, of how they did it in their time. Being tough conversations leads to tough decisions, but the decision is actually made. Some take a step back now, and some things are prioritized, and the next year is someone else's turn. But seemingly it doesn't go so right now. It's not going that way right now. And who's paying for that? The people of St. Martin. Because it's nice that we have an initiative amendment or law coming or being presented a while, but it shouldn't have taken 18 deaths to get to that point. It shouldn't have taken, because that's how much in the last 2 years has happened. This is what I mean with reactive instead of proactive. Because had we had those committee meetings, because everybody wanted to be committee chair, but no meetings are being ever called. Had we had those committee meetings, maybe these things would have come to the light earlier. Maybe, just maybe. And then, Madam Chair, how is it that there's a narrative being spun right now of outdated laws, this, that, and the other as it pertains to the traffic ordinance. And yes, the traffic ordinance is outdated, and yes, it needs to be updated, Madam Chair. But at the end of the day, if we don't even have the infrastructure in place to enforce old laws, what is an updated traffic ordinance going to do for the people of St. Martin? We don't even have the right markings on the road to enforce the current outdated law. But yet, we're here speaking about a new traffic ordinance, an updated traffic ordinance. Madam Chair, oftentimes, myself included, we put a lot of pressure on the Minister of Finance. Where are the revenue-generating measures? And I could understand, to a certain extent, a lot of ministers want to spend, spend, spend. But I could only imagine that the same Minister of Finance would ask them sometimes, how do you propose we make money now? Because every ministry that wants to spend, majority of them can also make money, make revenue. And the question has already been posed by one of the MPs, being what revenue-generating measures have been proposed by the Ministry of Justice over the last 2 years. Not even proposed, but what revenue streams have been proposed where the gaps that leads to missed funds will be closed. Because is justice collecting the funds that it can collect currently with the current laws? The answer would be no, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, the minister had a slide where she referenced 6,000 fines since 2024 has been issued. 6,000. But in the same breath, yeah, but a lot of them we can't really enforce because we don't have the things in place. People take us to court, we're going to lose. In other words, we fine people for nothing. Why are these gaps? Why haven't these gaps been closed? Why haven't we heard of these gaps in Parliament before today? Why? Madam Chair, reference was made to the capacity of the police force. Because one thing for certain, the boys in blue that we do have, they have been doing their best. So I don't want to misconstrue anything I'm about to say. But how can we speak about the police force being spread thin when we're spreading them thinner by putting them in immigration department as well? How can we speak about the police force being spread thin when we have an acting SG who's the head of the police force still acting as SG when the official SG is available to work? But yet the acting SG is still acting as SG when the official SG is there. But we spread thin. So is the spread thinness because of what the minister is doing in decision making, or are we really that thin? Because we're already thin, but we're spreading ourselves thinner because of decisions. Madam Chair, I would like to also ask, in the last 2 years, how many resignations from the Customs Department have we had? Because if we're talking about spreading ourselves thin, then we also need to look, aside from just recruitment, how do we keep the people that we have? Because seemingly the recruitment drives ain't going well. So I would like the minister to answer via you, Madam Chair, what is the rate right now as it pertains over the last 2 years of resignations in the Customs Department? As it relates to the justice workers, back pay has only gone back to January 1st, 2023. Can the minister via you, Madam Chair, kindly explain when and exactly how the rest of the money will be paid to the workers who have been waiting for more than a decade since 10-10-10? And as it pertains to the retirees, some who sadly has passed on in the meantime, can the minister explain, or can the minister let us know if retirees will be prioritized as it pertains to their payouts? Can the minister explain that, please? So, Madam Chair, again, in closing, when we discuss budgets, before budgets come to Parliament, the same way many of us have said we cannot vote on this budget if we can't stand behind it, I would like to implore ministers as well, don't always be the team player you think you're being, because you're not being a team player. Because when you're sitting down here right now in Parliament for you, Madam Chair, many ministers, no minister would jump up and say, yeah, don't go hard on her or him because, you know, we was being a team player. No, they'll leave you there in the hot water by yourself. So, Madam Chair, at the end of the day, before more articles like this come out saying ministers unanimously approve, and before other articles like basically what the priority of this government seemingly has been, Madam Chair, rushing a budget just to be the first time in country's history that a budget is approved before the end of the year. Right? The last time they said it didn't work, but I'm sure they're trying to make it done, get it done this time. Madam Chair, this should not be the priority. If we have to wait a couple more months for a proper budget, then let's do that. But rushing a budget just for kudos and fake trophies, when we have problems like what the minister explained here today, Madam Chair, we're doing the country an injustice. Because I could guarantee you the problems that the minister explained here today are not being solved in this budget. But it's already approved. One of the people that approved it is the minister herself. So what are we really doing? Is it coalition above country or country above coalition? Because seemingly, coalition happy, but the country hurting. And it's sad that a meeting like this, or basically what had occurred for a meeting like this to be called, had to happen for these things to come to the light. Because, Madam Chair, a year and a half ago, we had a Justice Matters meeting as well. And none of these things that also were a problem then, seemingly, were mentioned. Not one. So in closing, I would like to applaud the good MP Myers for his initiative amendment. I don't know if it's from him or from, but he presented it just now, so I'd like to applaud him initiative amendment. He has my support 1,000%. However, I think moving forward, as I've been saying, we need to stop being reactive and start being proactive. And if that includes even for you, Madam Chair, calling a meeting when it's requested, even though if it puts a minister in a tough spot, maybe the minister needs a tough spot in order to get them working. Maybe, just maybe. What I know is sometimes a request is put in and it takes over a year for the minister to come to Parliament. That's what I know. And that shouldn't be. That shouldn't be. So in closing, once again, I would like to thank the minister for coming. And Minister, I really would like to see something come out of the things that you mentioned today in your PowerPoint, and hope that it doesn't end up in a 2028 thing where we're still regurgitating the same things and nothing has happened. Thank you.
Thank you, MP York. Members of Parliament, ladies and gentlemen, with that, we have come to the end of the questions by members of Parliament on the topic of this meeting for today. I look to the Minister of Justice and I ask, having two things. Having heard the questions, Minister, when are you able to respond to these questions? That's one. And secondly, if there's anything that you would like to say on the topic before I adjourn this meeting. Minister Taklin, to you the word.
You, Madam Chair. I think a lot of the questions that were posed today were also questions to the prosecutor's office. There were also a lot of questions asked today about an individual case, which, you know, we can't discuss individual cases in public. So this is also not the setting. And so I think that it would be a good idea for us to maybe then, I know that Parliament is actually supposed to be on recess from today, I believe, as it is. So to look for a date then once Parliament reconvenes, of course, taking into account the budget as well, to look for then when we can come back to answer these questions, and whether we could do that in writing, or if we want that done, that I come back in person to the O.E.C. I don't know what the options are for that. That's the first part. I don't know if you want to.
No, you,
yes?
you continue, Minister.
Yes, and then I did want to, I had it here pulled up because I think it's important to look back again at what the agenda was today, because there were a lot of accusations from the floor of Parliament that there was something different expected from the minister, a different tone. There were interruptions here made about, no, but we need to be talking about the LTU. And the invitation for the meeting, as it says, a request for urgent meeting on the increase in traffic accidents and road safety concerns and other justice-related matters. We wish to address the following points during this meeting: the recent increase in traffic accidents and fatalities involving motorcycles and motor vehicles, current enforcement measures aimed at combating driving under the influence of alcohol and narcotic, compliance with and enforcement of the traffic ordinance, including speeding, reckless driving, and the use of preventive equipment, the deployment and effectiveness of traffic controls, checkpoints, and road safety operations conducted by the police force of St. Martin, the current capacity and manpower available within the traffic department and any plans to strengthen its operations, public awareness campaigns and educational initiatives aimed at promoting responsible driving and road safety, collaboration between the Ministry of Justice, KPSM, the Prosecutor's Office, and other stakeholders to address the growing problem, the possibility of introducing stricter penalties and additional measures to deter repeat offenders and dangerous driving behavior, the government's short-term and long-term strategy to reduce related injuries and fatalities, and then, of course, concerns and updates regarding any justice-related matters. So I would like to, again, draw on that and the presentation, which covered every single one of these points. So I urge the MPs to go back and listen to that. And I do want to take a second to also address the comment made by MP Lewis and the reaction of the family when it came to a smirk or or something that I would have shown in nonverbal communication on this side. And I found it, first of all, it's a shame that the family isn't here anymore, because I'm here today as minister, one, for the grief and the sympathy of this family, but for the families of all individuals that lost their lives today on the road. And if the family felt in any way, disrespected by that, of course, I would want to apologize to them, and at least there's this public statement to them apologizing. But it's also very difficult as minister to sit here and see MPs use the grief of a family to grandstand, because I know that we will argue that it wasn't that. But it's difficult to have that, and then to see MPs quoting the law and giving families a very wrong message in terms of what is happening in this country. So if there was a smirk, it was because I didn't know when MP Duran received his LLM overnight recently, but it was not directed towards the family. So I do want to apologize to them for that. And I know, again, that I can't speak here in public about that decision that I made, and I am more than willing to sit with the family and have that discussion to explain to them why I made the decision that I made, and that even up to the day of today, I would have made the same decision if it was in front of me again. And I can put my head on a block and I can explain it to the family, and I have no problem doing that. So, and I know that I made the right decision based on the legal framework and based on also public order concerns and everything that the Minister of Justice has to do, with, of course, the information that was available to me at that moment in time. So I think that that's important to say. So I'm very open to having that discussion, but the floor of Parliament to discuss an individual case, again, where a family is in grief and suffering, this is not the platform for that. And I will look at you, Madam Chair, to allow this.
You're not through yet, Minister, with your
I'll
statement?
wait for
Okay, so then, yes, I was going to allow you to finish your statement. I saw the MPs, that's why I did not interrupt you, but yes, let me do that. I'll give MP Lewis the floor for a brief interruption. MP Lewis.
Madam Chair, what the minister still fails to understand and to see is that you are here today based on the decision that you made, even though that you stand by your decision. And what you also fail to understand is in this setting, there was no time to smile and laugh about anything, whether if it was on something else. Hence the reason why my phone got blown up from right there. And I could show you personally the messages when we're done. The family who got my number, some of them who got my number said, look how the minister's smirking, we're very disappointed. We don't understand. They're not saying that you are smiling or smirking based on their situation. It's that this was not a setting. This was not a setting, Madam Chair. And that's the reason why when I stand here and I call a meeting along with my colleagues, ain't me personally who just call a meeting, Other colleagues said, Mr. Lewis, I think you should be the one to call a meeting. Hence the reason I put pen to paper. But other than that, it was not my primary initiative to call you. But when I'm caucus with my colleagues and they come to me about something, or the people come to me, Madam Chair, I have no choice but to do it. So don't ever think that it's a personal attack. And I'm telling you straight out, I need to see a Minister of Justice who will stand up for this country as a Minister of Justice. The people have to feel law and order. As a police officer, when you put on your uniform, you show that authority, and that's what I mentioned there. And Minister, it has to come from you like that. You have to show that you are the Minister of Justice in this country.
MP Lewis.
Not the prosecutor's office, and nobody else but you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, MP Lewis. MP Duran, you have the floor for an interruption.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I would like to touch on the fact that the minister mentioned she don't know where I get my LLM, so that's a law degree overnight. I don't have a LLM. I'm a simple IT technician from Sucker Garden that had love for country and decided to run for public office. But one thing I know for sure is that I don't need a LLM to know that if an ongoing criminal investigation is taking place, I could have taken some time to evaluate the situation. Less than a week before Mr. Gomes was put in the ground, this gentleman was whistled away, good escort, by the Minister of Justice. And to add, Madam Chair, and I wasn't going to mention this, your own leader distanced himself from your decision in a press release. Come on, Madam Chair. I don't need an LLM to point out that something wrong took place.
Next MP for an interruption is MP Irian. MP Irian.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I kind of wanted to thank MP Lewis for calling this meeting because, Minister, through you, Madam Chair, I'd like to tell the Minister, I'm a little disappointed in some of your last statements. I think your presentation was good. You brought the facts from your perspective. But the points of saying, for example, I wish the family was there to talk to them, I think the family wanted a conversation. So weeks later, the family have to hear, well, I would wish I could be able to tell them why I made this decision. I think that should have been done already if you wanted to or could have. So that's a little disappointing, I would say, to say that today, when for the last couple of weeks, they have been seeking answers under every Facebook post, every article, etc. They have been seeking answers. So I think if you could have brought a comfort weeks ago already, then for me, that's a little disappointing. Thank you.
Thank you, MP Irian. The next MP for an interruption is MP Myers. MP Myers, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. One of the things that always astonishes me here is how persons take what you say. Because if you read the article that I did not distance myself from the decision of the Minister of Justice. I said I will not be defending the decision by the prosecutor's office. And if you read the article, it was clear. It was clear what I said. I don't put myself in the position of the minister. I know what my role is as a member of parliament. I know what my role is as a community. You hear people get up here and say like they don't attack the boys in blue. But I remember Claudius Rogers. I remember Lucy Cachette. They must be wearing a different color. But I did not feel that it was appropriate to bring that kind of rhetoric into this meeting.
Thank you, MP Myers. MP Lewis, if you're looking for an interruption, I'll not allow any more for this meeting. I'll allow the minister to finish her words, and then we'll adjourn this meeting. That's okay, MP. I've heard worst. You do that. You have said enough already. MP, Minister Tacklin, you may finish your concluding remarks for this meeting.
Yes, I think once again, Madam, it's difficult and unfortunate that, there's a lot being said that I can't counter right now in a public meeting. I think if that was the discussion that Parliament wanted to have, there should have been a closed-door meeting very much about the decision of the Minister of Justice. Then it would have been a different type of discussion because, unfortunately, there's also a lot being said that I think the prosecutor's office would have to account for, and even in these questions, because, again, there is an active investigation, that cannot happen. I also heard a reference, and I did want to correct that I knew something that the public prosecutor doesn't know. There were two press releases that came out regarding this accident. The first one was a KPSM press release in which it was stated that allegedly the car was overtaking multiple vehicles. The press release from the prosecutor's office later clarified that there was currently no evidence that the car had overtaken multiple vehicles, not that they were not overtaking. That was not in the press release of the prosecutor's office. So I heard a couple times saying that I stated in my presentation that there was a car making an overtaking maneuver, and this is true. How many vehicles were overtaken, we don't know. And again, I have been informed that this investigation is still ongoing. The dossier warming is still happening. And again, as Minister of Justice, I am not privy to the details of this investigation, but I do know that it is still ongoing. So I know that for, I think, a large number of these questions that at least relates to this specific case, that they will not be able to be answered, given that it's an ongoing investigation. But again, I did want to just take this moment still to express my condolences and my sympathy to the family. And again, if any nonverbal communication was taken in a bad way, then again, I apologize, because in the decision that I take, I want to assure the family, and I hope to be able to do this again to them in person, that I considered their circumstances in making my decision. And I think that it's one that I can explain and that I can stand by and that I still stand by. And again, I can't explain it here on the floor of Parliament, but I'm happy to do it with them as the belanghebbende in this entire story, that we could at least bring that type of understanding for them. And I know that at the end of the day, nothing is going to bring back their loved one. No discussion that we have here today is going to bring him back or change the outcome of what happened. But I think that I heard a lot here today of how do we ensure that this doesn't happen again. And MP Duran started his presentation by saying that he just wanted the truth from the minister. And again, if we look at the agenda and the presentation that was given, it was a very honest presentation, because I explained exactly where we cannot do certain things and what we can and we cannot do. So I also gave a presentation that made me very vulnerable to attacks from Parliament when looking at the vulnerabilities and admitting the weaknesses of this ministry. So I came here and told the truth about our current situation. When it comes to the individual case, that is a discussion that I am happy to have with the family, but it's not a discussion and an explanation that I can give today here on the floor of Parliament. So that being said, Madam Chair, I'll look to you to see when is an appropriate date for us to reconvene this meeting to provide the answers.
Thank you, Minister. And that will be decided on between your cabinet and our secretariat in terms of when this meeting can continue. I encourage you, Minister, if you can, notwithstanding that still having to happen, that you send in the answers as quickly as you have them in writing for the members to have those answers at their disposal. Secondly, I would want to suggest, based on what we've heard in this meeting, proposals from several members, that a committee of justice meeting be called as soon as possible to bring all the ideas and suggestions and drafts and amendments on this topic together. As you know, I am a firm proponent of Parliament doing its work as independently as it can, and that we don't need a minister to do, for example, that I just mentioned. So I want to encourage that. I look to the chair and ask that that take place as soon as possible as a follow-up to this meeting and the discussions. And thirdly, Minister, I take your words, your offer, and which you mentioned to me also before this meeting began, in terms of sitting with the family to give whatever information, additional information that you can share with them. I think they would still be very much encouraged by that. Those who know that this family is my close family, and that I am related in different ways also with respect to the other side of the family of the tragically lost young man, Ryan. So, Minister, I see you would like to maybe say something, but I again want to encourage you to still make use or make that offer to the family. I am sure they will appreciate it. And Minister, I saw you wanted to make a comment. I allow you to do so before I adjourn this meeting.
Yes, I did want to make a quick comment. I was waiting for some information because I did want to clarify that today when it comes to the law that I was referring to. This actually dates back to 2 administrations ago, and the project cost was calculated up until May 16th, 2024, so previous to me becoming minister. So in that case, I know that was a question from MP Myers of, hey, when is this legislation actually from? And I know that that was a multi-year project. And again, we are talking in the hundreds of thousands that are owed. So for that project. And so it's not something that happened under this administration, but we are happy to look for a solution to be able to bring this to the finish line.
Thank you once again, Minister, for that addition, and that just reinforces my request to you that all of the answers that you can be provided in writing as soon as you can, so that the members of Parliament can then decide what from our side can be done with respect to especially that information. Members of Parliament, I want to thank you for your attendance and participation in this meeting. Our support staff, I want to thank the Minister and her support staff for your presence, your information that was provided, and to those tuned into this meeting, I thank you for your interest in this topic, and this meeting will be adjourned until further notice. Meeting adjourned.